This episode of Watch Out for Fireballs is brought to you by Duckfest? What? That's right. If you go to Duckfeed.tv/Duckfest, you can find out all kinds of information. Information on things like what it is. What even is it? Cool podcast festival in Portland, Oregon. When is it? August 31st, 9:30 to 5:30. And who's all performing? All your Duckfeed favorites. Assuming that your favorites are the ones that are performing, and then also some local guest performances. It is going to be fun and unpredictable, and it's the first time we've ever done it, and we would love you to come out. I understand not everybody lives here. If you're able to, we'd love to see you. Please come out. It's the first time. We'd love your support. So, again, that's Duckfeed.tv/Duckfest. Thank you. My name is Gary Butterfield.
My name is Cole Ross.
And you're listening to Watch Out for Fireballs. It is a Games Club podcast.
And this week we are talking about Final Fantasy V, which is a Japanese role-playing game developed and published by Square for the Super Famicom in 1992.
Yeah, and it's summer JRPG time.
Yeah. Hot time random encounters. Nope, messed it up.
Time. Really high encounter rate. We're doing Final Fantasy V this year, and we're doing it in 2 episodes. Mm-hmm. This first episode is covering generalities, which will be generous, and then World 1. For people who have not played Final Fantasy V, it is roughly split into 3 parts and 3 worlds. We're doing the first one this episode.
Yeah, I was pausing to think about this. We've covered a lot of Final Fantasy games, and from the ones that I care about. All that's left is 8, 9, and 12.
Yeah. We've done them. Somebody on the Slack said, surely there'll be a moratorium on Final Fantasy games for a while after this. Which I just thought was a funny phrasing. Yeah. And it's like, but the thing with Final Fantasy is they're all different. So it's yes, we could switch to a different series, which we will at some point. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I also, in the future, there will be things like Nier, right? Like there will be things that are not quite like basically what I'm saying sideways is this makes me extremely horny to do Let Us Hang Together. Yep. And that would be a great summer JRPG next year, even though it's not quite a JRPG, but it's also a super long game that'll take multiple parts. And yes. Yeah. And this made me extremely want to play that. Not that I'm not having fun with this. Yeah. But, this did remind me of make me want to play Final Fantasy Tactics and other tactics games quite a bit. We have almost covered all the Final Fantasies I care to. Mm-hmm. Like for me, it's like 8 and 9 basically, because I'm not a 12 guy. Like I would do 12 if it made sense. But, and then even then, like I am more eager to replay 9 than 8. Like I like the story of 9 better. Mm-hmm. And then after that, like we're free. And we can do come on, Shadow Hearts Covenant.
That'd rule.
That'd be a good one. Like there's other ones we can do, and it just you mentioned hot times, random encounters in the city. Like the associated difficulties with doing these games are true, right? Like this game, which I like this game. I have some, I obviously have some criticisms of it. I like it. we early on when we talked about JRPGs, we were like, we're not going to talk about the random encounter thing just because it's like your racist uncle.
Yeah.
And you just allow your racist uncle. It's 2019.
Yep.
I no longer allow my racist uncle. And I also no longer, it's like, man, the encounter rate in this game, it makes it like, you can play it while like doing something else.
Mm-hmm.
It's like every couple, like sometimes it's like 4 steps.
Yeah.
It is not. I'm playing the GBA version. We'll get into versions later, of course. But it's like the tuning on that random encounter thing is just absolutely nuts.
Yeah, it comes at you coming in hot in terms of the random encounter rates.
And I haven't had a non-boss encounter that I've had to pay attention to yet.
Yeah.
And I'm 2/3 through the game. That's a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Like most, it is doing the JRPG thing where most of the game I don't have to do anything.
Right.
It's really weird. Mm-hmm. It is a weird genre, folks. I'm telling you, it's a strange genre. And it is, I just tap it. And you set up that memory thing, you're good. If I can make somebody do rapid fire instead of fight and then just have that be their automatic default thing, fuck, I'm good.
Yeah. And if you looked around in 2010 and thought, where did all the JRPGs go?
This might be it.
Yeah.
Like it might be just like, they and why they're all action games now. Like we talked about Final Fantasy. Final Fantasy is just an action series now.
Yes.
Like it's not, there's nothing JRPG about it genre wise, right? Like they have to do these explicit throwbacks with Ariana Grande in them to actually do this kind of game. Like it has to be a mobile phone, or a portable only experience.
Yeah.
And then like the Bravely Default team comes out with something and everyone like absolutely goes nuts for like a month, Right? But like maybe this is what happened to the genre is just like every couple steps you just have to tap A to get through a little like basically cutscene.
Yeah, I mean, and it's probably pretty telling that when they re-release games like this, at least from the PS2 era, they put in all those features to skip whole sections of the game.
Huge sections of mechanics. And it would be really difficult for this one, just giving yourself max AP or experience for this. Like what you would want is to just have your characters walk around and whenever there would be an encounter, you just get that much experience.
Yes.
So you're still playing with an appropriately leveled party for the boss fights and can kind of, play and make your job choices.
Yeah.
But just like there's those tiles and when you walk on them, it's a dink, you just get a little pickup of experience in APB or ABB. ABP. I'm going to say APB, all points bulletin a lot during this duology. But that would be a way to do it because it's like, man, it's nuts.
No, because like the boss fights are generally fine. Like those are interesting. Great. Yeah, like I like that. That's where this sings, especially with the job system. So
the boss fights have been surprisingly challenging. Like I died on boss fights on this, like not in this first world, but in the second world. And I was not. It's been a while since I died to a Final Fantasy boss. Like it was pretty rare when we did 10. The boss fights in this are really good. The job system is, it's not its final form, but it's good. There are things like I genuinely like this game a lot, but man, does most of the game just consist of like random battle music and just tapping A to make my dudes do double slash and rapid fire to get through it. So just getting that out there now.
Yeah,
just not complain about it constantly. I just like, man, does it suck? Does that aspect suck? Like not the game.
Understand that this is just kind of going to be a banner that we're going to be marching under. We're not going to be always pointing up at the banner when it happens, but just understand that like this is where we are at in covering JRPGs. For the show right now, even ones that we really really enjoy.
I think it does like kind of make me feel like it almost needs to inform future choices.
Yeah.
Like this might be, and that doesn't mean never doing a game that has these things, but it means doing games that have had that re-release with those quality of life features or can be played in an emulator on increased speed or something, right? Because like I'm almost out of time for that.
Yeah.
Like very close, like just like out of time in my life. Right? Like I'm pushing 40. I've got the little gem on my palm is like fucking freaking out. It's like a flickering fluorescent light in an abandoned asylum. Like I am almost out of time for this.
Yeah.
And again, having fun with this mostly through like watching on cinema at the same time. So I have all these positive memories of like Turkington going, hey guys, during the entire time, but this might be it.
Yeah.
So just throwing that out there, like that doesn't mean we can't do Final Fantasy 9. It means I'm going to play the Steam version in which you can just like skip a bunch of nonsense.
Yeah.
Because this it's frustrating. Like it's very frustrating to me. And in the GBA version, at the very least, it is tuned higher than average.
Yes.
Like it is sometimes 3 steps, sometimes 4 steps.
Yeah. I played the GBA version as well. We'll talk about kind of what's different about that when we get to it.
Oh yeah. And it's largely considered to be like a good version of it, if not the best version of it, other than the original Super Famicom version. So yeah. In this game, you play as 4 adventurers who are on a quest to save the world's crystals from an extra dimensional threat known as X-Death.
Yeah. The fact that the character, the main bad guy's name has death in it is probably indicative of the complexity that we are dealing with.
Yeah, we'll get into the plot, which like I have a lot of positive things to say about this game. I am generally having fun.
Yeah.
None of the positive things I have to say deal with the plot.
Yeah.
Of this. Like, this is a big step back, and us doing this after 4 and after 10 even is not going to make this look good in comparison.
No.
These characters, the world is very simple, the story is very simple, and the characters are as two-dimensional as they come. Like, there's no such thing as a complicated relationship in this game.
No.
Everyone likes each other, or they love each other.
Yeah.
And those are the 2 things, and they want to do good, or they want to do good. And those are the 2, that's what we have to choose from here. Like, these are absolutely as two-dimensional as characters have been in a game, basically.
Yeah.
So they're as two-dimensional as Mario.
Yeah.
Not Mario in the Mario RPGs.
No,
which is much more
he's silent.
For our feature story, which is much more two-dimensional.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. So, the general mechanics, it's going to be really familiar to you if you have played, especially like Final Fantasy IV, top down world and dungeon navigation. It's, the active time battle system comes over. You go down from 5, party members to 4 again. And yeah, it looks and feels an awful lot like Final Fantasy IV. I think down to I think maybe there's even some asset reuse, actually.
It would be very surprising to me if there wasn't. Like, these castles, some of these castles and towns look very similar.
Yeah.
The type 1 on an active time battle means that your characters have a stat that determines when they can move. And while you're deciding what for your character to do, outside of a menu, time still moves forward.
Yes.
So the enemy can then move and interrupt you is basically what active time battle means in a nutshell. We've done more lengthy explanations of that in the Final Fantasy IV episodes.
Yes.
If you haven't heard those, go back for more talk on that.
Right. And of the SNES trilogy, this is the most mechanically, I think, just rich one. Just because of the presence of the job system, which is on loan here from Final Fantasy III.
Much improved. 3.
Yes, very much improved. Just because, and we'll talk about the thing that is the added complication that benefits it. This is distinct from Final Fantasy IV's approach, where you had individual characters who stuck to their assigned job.
Yes, or 6's where you have basically you choose a loadout for a character through espers, and that's modular. So you choose the characters you like. There's a little bit of difference between them, but you just kind of choose what they'll be through that, and kind of permanently make them into a long running thing. This is much more agile.
Yes.
Through that. So the way this works is you gain experience, which allows you to gain levels like any RPG. You gain HP and stats and such, but you also gain something called ability points. And your characters have a character level, which is kind of a master level that applies to your character no matter what they're doing, and then a job level that is specific to certain assigned jobs.
Yes. Without a job on, most of the character stats are really similar to each other.
Yes.
When you're just rolling around at the start of this game, it's kind of ridiculous how exactly the same they are. But the job is what
they like very minor differences, which people like min-maxers will be like, this character needs to be this kind of class because they have this like 2-point stat buff in this thing, and that's not true. Like, make them whatever you want because they're all so close as to be basically identical.
Yeah. So we have these jobs, and these are like character classes, and you would, understand what these are if you've played, other Final Fantasy games or even other fantasy RPGs, that kind of break down into these categories of physical fighters, casters, hybrids, and then just weirdo classes. And they differentiate from each other, not just because of their stats or what they can equip, but these abilities that they have, both passive and active.
Yes. And those abilities are earned through leveling up your ability points, and then assigned.
Yes.
As well mention. Your character level, your master level, kind of determines your base stat growth, and then when you apply a job, it's like applying a set of modifiers.
Yeah.
to those stats while the job is assigned. It is not like Final Fantasy Tactics or later games where gaining a level as a knight gives you different permanent stat increases to your character. It's when you're a knight, you have these stat increases to your character. Other than one exception, which we'll talk about.
There's a way for that to happen, but
yes.
So when you're playing as the job, you're going to be able to do whatever that character can do, whatever that job class lets you have, as long as you like for magic users, you have to buy the spells. A little bit like Final Fantasy 1 and 3. And there are a couple of exceptions where they're just abilities that you get by unlocking them, but those are mostly for portability, for moving on to another job.
Yes. Yeah. So when you have a character, all characters have attack and item and defend as moves. And these are non-freelancer. We'll talk about all that freelancer mime stuff eventually for people who are screaming at us. Yes. Most classes you have those three things, and then you have the basic that comes with your class. So if you're a white mage, you have the white magic thing, just comes with your class, and then you have a secondary thing, which can come from either that class, right? Look, one of the major weaknesses of this job system is that you have to assign stuff like that. So if you want to have a thief who can run away very easily, they don't just hard code that into running away.
No,
they make it an active ability you have to assign. So as a thief, you have to actually use both your slots to steal and run away. But that secondary slot can be from any class.
Right.
So what you do is you create hybrids. Yeah. And the combinations are, nigh endless. That doesn't mean that there are nigh endless ones that are effective or that you should even consider, right? Like having that thief that has flee is not that interesting. Or having a white mage that has
red magic.
Yeah, red magic, right? That can be frankly superfluous. Or like just not good use, right? Like barehanded. Like a barehanded white mage, not that interesting.
Yeah. A berserker with white magic. You're never going to be able to cast that, dog.
Yep.
Yeah.
But you can make much more effective things like this. So like if you want to have you have a knight, he's generally there to have a lot of HP and to cover characters when they're about to die. Maybe you want him to be able, and covering happens automatically. Maybe you want him to be able to heal as well. Yeah. So you give him some levels in white mage, then he can also cast a heal spell on his turn. And you've made this kind of like hybrid, like this paladin Templar type of character. And it's neat.
Yeah. And certain classes are already kind of hybridized, so you can see like how you are setting up these gradients and synergies between them.
Yes.
And of course, when you have anything like this, you have things that can just absolutely break the game. And I have, we've said this for a while, but for me, a system in any JRPG, but Final Fantasy in particular, to me is at its best when it's most breakable.
Yeah. Even though I will say that with Final Fantasy V, one of the very minor bummers to me is that it takes so much work to break it.
Yeah.
We'll talk about this at some point, I'm sure, but this game is downright absolutely stingy with ability points.
Yes.
It takes an age to, and yes, there are tricks, like there are specific rooms you can grind in using certain tricks to like make these things happen faster.
Jade I've killed so many of you.
Yeah, exactly. Like they come late, right? Like those things tend to come late. And also that's, I get like not a good value proposition. Like, yes, you can break the game in exchange for this tedium.
Yeah.
Like it's not breakable. It feels less breakable. To me, the gold standard of breakable Final Fantasies is 8. Because it is not just about how much time you put in to something. It's about, hey, go play cards against this one guy in this one town, win his rare card, and then process it.
Yeah.
It's more about exploration and finding secrets to break it than tedium.
Yeah.
Like in a weird way, there's not that much difference between breaking the game the way you do it in Final Fantasy V and breaking it like you would in Final Fantasy 1 by grinding up to level 99.
Yeah.
It takes less time, but it's the same verb you're doing to break it.
Yeah.
It's just in Final Fantasy V, it requires a little bit more cleverness and ingenuity to come up with a combo, which is worthwhile. It's valuable.
Yeah.
But I wish that this game was not quite as stingy with APB as it is.
Yep.
ABP.
I just say AP. I don't care if it's right. It just AP is easier to remember.
Yeah. I wish it wasn't so stingy with treats.
Yeah. No, I mean, so like to give you an idea, an average encounter will give you like 1 or 2. The big payday is 5. And, like it varies, depending on what level you're trying to reach on a particular class. But like, at the minimum, you have to earn like 50 of them. So maybe 25 to 30 encounters to gain a level.
To get like a level 2 or 3.
Yes.
Like they start with something very easy to get. Mm-hmm. And then the real issue is their final abilities, which take like 500, like 400 plus.
Yeah.
Right. So that's the real issue, is that when most things are giving you 1 to 3 at that point, that's a lot. Yeah. That's a lot of encounters to get that ability. And that has these weird knock-on effects with the curve, because one of the great joys of this game is getting a new job and testing it out.
Yeah.
Like switching jobs is fun.
Yep.
In this game, like switching your verb set.
I wish I could do it more often.
Exactly. Like when I'm trying to get rapid fire. Like I got a team of 3 Rangers. This fucking sucks.
Yeah.
Like you're going to spend a lot of time in that zone, because they make the last abilities. And there's a myriad ways to fix this, right? Like Final Fantasy Tactics did it. There were high level abilities in Final Fantasy Tactics, but you gained a lot more JP in that. You had ways to mitigate your JP growth or like increase it.
Yep.
There's ability that makes that better. You gain more than 1 per battle. Like one of the more infuriating decisions in this is that AP is per encounter, not per enemy.
Yes.
Like if it's just 1 was the minimum per enemy, it'd be great. Like you'd be getting a lot of like 3s early on, but who cares?
Yeah.
That's great. That'd be all right. Let me get these like more powerful things. Like they prove that they know how to make battles where it is about your ingenuity, right? Like the optional battles in this, you can't out level. They're extremely tough, kind of no matter what. Just make it more tough if you're going to make me more tough.
Yeah.
And then I'm more engaged and win-win. And then I'm not just like trying to grind 2-handed or like dual wield.
Yeah.
For like half my team at a time, which just takes forever.
Yeah. Just what I want is for this system to, A, force me to think around corners, and B, give me way more corners to think around.
Yeah. Yep. And which is basically what Final Fantasy Tactics does.
Yes.
Like playing this again has made me really compare like job systems, right? And see the way that this is better than 3, but most important to me, because Final Fantasy Tactics is one of my all-time favorite games, is see how Final Fantasy Tactics fixed this.
Yes.
By having more innate abilities, like fewer things you have to equip, by making your entire verb set part of a single menu command. So there's none of that thief having to equip steal and flee separately.
Yeah.
Flee would just be a thing under their action command. It'd be a sub menu.
Yeah.
And then just like not being as stingy with JP. Like those 3 things make Final Fantasy Tactics a like far superior job system to this.
Yeah.
And being able to assign those different categories of things. So if you want to assign your knight with counter, he wouldn't just have, counter. He could have counter as his reaction ability, but then like, I don't know, dual wield as his passive ability, his support ability.
Yeah.
And then you're talking, then you're cooking with Viagra.
Yeah.
Like
it would be nice if it was more granular.
Yeah.
But maybe they had to go through this to get to that. So
I think so too, right? Yeah. Like obviously this came out way before Final Fantasy Tactics does. I'm just thinking of it in terms of like going back is a little bit tougher, just because I did miss having that variety.
Yeah. And, I've played Final Fantasy Tactics far more times than I've played this. Yeah. This is the 3rd time I've played Final Fantasy V.
Me too. It'll be the 2nd time I've beat it.
Okay.
I've like done I beat it once when it came out on PS1 with that horrible, translation and load times and stuff. And then I did a run up on it on GBA, but I did not beat it.
Yeah.
I just found my cart and saw where I got, which was near the end, but not actually at the end.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but just for me, having spent so much more time with Final Fantasy Tactics, the point I was going to make there is I came back to this with a lot of assumptions about the way that basically I thought that this worked like that more than it did.
Yeah.
So that also ushered in kind of the disappointment for me.
Me too.
A little bit disappointment, like lowercase d disappointment, not capital disappointment.
Mild disappointment.
Yeah. Yep.
Um,
So we talked about how leveling up in a particular class doesn't necessarily affect your character's stat growth. That's not exactly the case. There is a weird way that this happens, and that has to do with the way that your base class, the freelancer, and then a class we're going to get next episode, the mime, the way that those behave. So like ultimately you're going to come back home. You're going to go back to being a freelancer, or if you're feeling saucy, you're going to make them a mime because of how many abilities they let you assign.
Yeah, it becomes closer to Final Fantasy Tactics,
Yes.
where you have a lot more of that granularity. When you master a class, they will get a static stat bump to that character class, your base class, your freelancer or mime, and it takes the highest of the ones you've done. So, for example, and these aren't exact, but like let's say Berserker gives you plus 20 strength, and Knight gives you plus 15. If you've mastered them both you get plus 20.
Yeah,
they don't add.
You don't get 38.
You don't get 30. Yeah, in any category, you get the highest of the ones you've mastered, which incentivizes mastering a lot of classes before the end, which is a grindy nightmare.
Yes.
Doing a lot of like mastering classes just for their stats is a bridge too far for me. You know, again, because anytime you're mastering a thing, you have to spend time in that class.
Yeah.
So if it's not a fun class to play, you know, you got to spend time in it, which is a bummer to me. But that is a way to make your absolutely top tier parties at the end.
Yeah. And it discourages you swapping around too.
Yes.
It forces me to play in a way that runs counter to my instinct. You know, I want to dabble, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Another benefit of being a freelancer or a mime is that you can equip the majority of weapons in the game as well. You know, most of the, all the classes come with their own weapon and armor that they can wear. When you are just rolling around, when you're rolling naked, then you can equip everything.
Yeah. Yep. One of the things I'm glad you have this in the notes because it is an annoyance, right? Like not a Vorpal annoyance, but just an annoyance, is that you are walking around with an eye towards the future. Like you're building characters. This gives you certain party combinations are maybe not, ideal. When you run into a boss encounter, because the boss, and this is a good thing, because the bosses are tough and tuned really hard, you might need a specifically like efficacious party to defeat them. Yeah. But you don't always know when you're going to run into a boss, or you do, but you want to try that boss with your growth party because bosses tend to have big AP rewards associated with them, except for when they have none, which is crazy. But like, tend to like have quite a few, right? So like, hey, I've got my party of 2 rangers. I want to take them into this boss fight because I want to get rapid fire sooner. Maybe this boss is so hard that it wipes the floor with your 2 rangers. So then it is hey, save, reload, try to configure a party that will beat this boss. Yes. It's like a fun puzzle, but it does run a little bit contrary to the loop of the game.
Yeah.
In a way that's, again, minor friction, very minor. But still a little bit of a friction.
I mean, so it brings in trial and error gameplay, right? Because there are some encounters where just it's not surmountable with what you are bringing in because of immunities, because of elemental concerns, different things like that. So like, yes, when you have these options and when you can customize everything, the better part of customization is adaptation. Right. But when adaptation has to occur across the boundary of a total party wipe, across a reload, that feels inherently unsatisfying, and it feels like the game is expecting me to look into the future a little bit. Or it is like silently criticizing me for not making an optimal choice.
It is explicitly part of the loop to die on the boss, reload, and reconfigure a party. A real easy way to get around this would have allowing you to run from battles, like boss battles. Like games tend not to do that, and for the life of me, I don't understand why. Right. Like it's such an exception. When a game allows you to run from a boss battle, like why not let me run and try again? Yeah, put a little
sprite. Like you don't have to make a sprite, make it a little like glowy orb. Doesn't have to be an asset.
And then as you go away, and then like as I get to try again, the only difference between that and what you're actually doing is that me seeing that title screen and then me walking from the save point to the boss. Yeah. And if you're designing your game well, that save point is very close to that boss regardless, especially in a JRPG. So you're really not losing anything by letting people run from boss battles. Right. And that would have solved this problem because you'd get into a boss, you'd be like, well, shit, my party of magic harps, like my party of classes that don't get good until I put a bunch of time in them, totally ill suited for this. Let's run away and try again. Be great. It'd be a real easy fix for this in particular, very minor problem.
Yeah. Which, again, is not to say that the boss encounters are not fun. It feels very good. I just, without catering the design of my party to what the boss is asking for, it felt very just kind of not beyond possibility, but it felt unsatisfying to try to get through it. With a suboptimal play. Yeah.
Well, and also again, the flip side of that is setting up to an optimal party you do not care to get the AP for.
Yes.
right? Like it's like, well, I can go through. I'm definitely going to get get this huge payday based on this, but it's gonna be a huge payday that goes into the fucking night. And like, yes, mastering the night will give me stat bonuses later if I do the freelancer thing. So it's not totally wasted, but it doesn't feel as good as making progress towards your immediate goal.
Yeah.
Towards your immediate builds. So not a huge deal, just a minor frustration.
Yes. Yeah. So, the last time we talked about any kind of job system back in 2012, I think I wrote 2013 here, but it was absolutely 20. Yeah.
Too long ago. We can start doing Retronaut stuff and just redoing games, man. Telling you, if Retronauts can do it, we can do it. They've done 6 episodes on Metal Gear Solid 1, I think.
Oh, yeah?
I don't know if that's true, but Jerry Parrish does like to write about that game and talk about it. I feel like we could go back to Final Fantasy Tactics. Yeah. Honestly, we'll just do Tactics over, but it's been a long time is my point. I'm due for a replay, even if it is just for sport.
Well, another difference for that though, and something that I walked into this thinking was the case. Here you just get new classes at certain points in the story. Crystal breaks, and then you sweep up a bunch of the pieces, and they give you new jobs, as opposed to having like a branch of requirements, right?
Yeah. So what that does is it kind of get rid of some of the jobs' relations to each other.
Yes.
Like that's just a cute touch, but it's always something I always liked in Final Fantasy Tactics.
Got to train as a thief to be a ninja.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it made sense. Okay. It was like diegetic. Here, they just kind of pop them on you. And what that means is if you, they do them in increasing complexity. So the more advanced jobs don't come until the end. But that means that, like, let's say you're going for a certain build, like on replays, it makes spending time with those first couple crystals kind of a pain.
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, a huge deal.
Yep. But, for me, this game doesn't really come alive until I get the time mage.
Exactly. Like almost all the classes.
Yeah.
So let's talk about characterization and motivation. And this is, so you've got here in the notes, this is a point from Chris Kohler's book, and Chris Kohler, and this is true, is that, this game has very weak characterization.
Yes.
And a very weak plot. And the prevailing, and he's not the only person I've heard say this, the prevailing attitude towards that is that because these characters couldn't be defined by a career, they had to be paper thin.
Right.
In other Final Fantasy games, Cecil is a Dark Knight who becomes a paladin. His character arc is his job.
Yes.
Here, where they could be anything, they kind of have to have no personality. I reject that. I think that writers can do that. I think that that's something writing could just do.
Yeah.
No one would be confused if you wouldn't call it a paladin and a Dark Knight. You would say like, the blank, the Dark Order and then the Luminous Path or whatever, right? Like, but you could still do that narratively without having it affect his job. Like, every time I see this point, I feel like I'm the last sane person on earth because I don't think this holds water. Like, I think that this is a unfulfilling explanation for poor writing to me.
Yeah. And also it has the cadence of an excuse saying characterization and story and motivation had to be sacrificed in order to give you this, this system, these mechanics. And again, we keep on making this comparison, but there is nothing about Ramza Beov who, that says he cannot be a geomancer just like it doesn't play in.
He's an incredibly rich character.
Yeah.
And it's not even just the characterization here that's flat in terms of describing the characters, because it's extremely it's crazy flat.
Yeah.
But also it's in relation to each other.
Yes.
Right. So like when I think about Ramza, I think about Delita. And that relationship is a through line throughout that entire game that lends pathos and intrigue to the entire situation.
Yeah.
There's just nothing close to that here. And, yes, that's a later comparison. Let's compare it to Final Fantasy IV, which came before that, which had Kain.
Yep.
Right? Like, there's nothing Dragoon-like about Kain that defines his arc.
Yeah.
Like, Kain could have done the exact same arc as a black mage or a chemist or anything. It was just having a character arc.
Yes.
Which none of these characters have. No characters change. No characters learn anything. Nothing happens to them.
Well, I mean, one of them is amnesia, and the other one is not the sex that they appear to be.
Yeah, there's one person who is there's like a moment of intrigue where they're doing ladybugs.
Yeah.
Ladybugs was the Rodney Dangerfield. No, that was the one where he just coached. It wasn't the soccer, the girl soccer player who dressed up as the boy to play boy soccer.
No.
There's one character doing that. Lena is real rough in this game.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what is there to say about Lena?
What if there was a daughter?
What if there was a daughter? Yeah. Bart is an idiot. He's kind of a bro. That's like the extent of his thing. Galef is kind of fun.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like Galef is kind of funny, and then he gets replaced by somebody who isn't.
Yeah.
Wait,
just an alarm went off. Personality alert. Personality alert.
Yeah, like just like this guy seems a little bit fun. Like he's not really doing any, emotional work, but he seems kind of fun.
Yeah, yeah.
What if we got rid of him? It is just, it's baldly flat. And again, Final Fantasy IV did relationships. Like there were complicated relationships, like Cecil and Rosa, right? Like she understood, she was standing by her man like during this time where he was not being necessarily a good person.
Yeah.
That is not something that has anything to do with jobs.
No.
Like that has nothing to do with their roles. That's characterization.
It has to do with what they do.
It's not, their actions. Like it has to do with the story. It's not even writing 101. Like this is just what writing is.
Yeah.
When doing characters and characterization, and to say like, oh, it's actually like, first of all, like it's not a big deal that they didn't do this because of the job thing. But then the absolutely nuclear brain take I've seen is like that it's good that they don't have that because it allows you to concentrate on the jobs.
Oh, I can concentrate on a bunch of different stuff.
I'm going to need this genre to stop treating me like a fucking idiot.
Yep.
Like that is like literally a thing that is going like, in moving forward with this, because it already does that in terms of like, hey, you need to do the first 2 dungeons with no verbs.
Yeah.
Because we need to make sure you can move the character around. Like that's extremely frustrating. No other genre does that. Like, yes, you have like a tutorial level in a shooter where they teach you how to duck, but there's still context for what you're doing.
Yeah.
And they introduce like mechanics. But then you end up with like Final Fantasy 13 where they're still introducing mechanics like 10 hours in and stuff. This genre is condescending as hell.
Yeah.
And the idea that, hey, you wouldn't be able to concentrate on the jobs if these were proper characters is ridiculous.
Yeah.
On its face. That is baldly ridiculous.
It's kind of a laughable conceit. And like, I can understand a person having a preference for like, oh yeah, like I just want something light. Like, well, whatever. Yeah. Just as long as this is an excuse to go to different places, cool. Everybody has different priorities. It is a marked difference for this series.
It's not, and the series, the popular wisdom is like that there are mechanics focused entries of Final Fantasy games and narrative focused ones, right? That's not true. There's this one that is the only one that is only mechanical focused. There's Final Fantasy V and then the rest of the series, because if you look at something like 8, which I have a lot of problems with the story of 8, but you never say that wasn't narrative focused or that those weren't characters.
Yeah. And you would never say that wasn't, mechanically rich.
Extremely mechanically rich. Took at least a stab at characterization. Like those characters had relationships and motivations to each other. Like there's a rivalry, like a Draco Malfoy, Harry Potter read a different book rivalry. In that there's like, people have crushes on their teachers, which is weird. There's Renoa, who is like this activist. There's like these characters have like personalities that are irrespective of their mechanical abilities. And that's mechanically rich as hell. 9 is not that much less rich than this is. So it's not a dichotomy. It's not a choice. This is the only entry that makes you make a choice. And it stands out like that. Like it is, really, really the outlier in the series.
Yeah. And like something of a bummer is I could see somebody looking at the weak plot of this and saying, I play a Final Fantasy for the melodrama. I'm here for the soap opera, and I'm going to skip over 5 with its cool mechanics and good boss fights, just because it's not going to give me what I want.
Because it's about a character named X-Death who wants to destroy the world.
Yeah.
Wants to destroy the universe.
A tree named X-Death who wants to kill butts.
Yeah, exactly. Again, that's literally that's not the beginning of it. That's also the end. That's the extent of it.
Yeah.
It's really bothersome to me, and the tone is really weird. It's like I think this is supposed to be a comedy entry.
Yes.
Of the series, like playing through this one, I'm like, oh, these are supposed to be jokes. Like, but it's not very funny. And which is fine because it's like maybe just, humor is subjective, right? Like there's, Galef is kind of fun because he tries to be funny, even if there are no jokes.
Yeah.
That he makes that are good jokes. Like it's kind of fun, but it runs contrary because it does kind of dabble its toes in that melodrama, right? Like there are character deaths in this.
Yeah.
There are scenes that have the approach of a Final Fantasy IV approach to the melodrama, but that is like the first time I think Final Fantasy got melodrama like totally right.
Yes.
Like the arcs and pacing of that story is like a children's adventure story in a good way.
Yes.
Here it still dabbles in that, but what if there were no characters or plot or location or a good antagonist?
Yeah.
And also every once in a while, when someone was hanging from a ledge, someone said, hang in there. And someone said, that's a bad pun. And they said it again. And they said, that pun's bad too. And I'm like, what's the same fucking pun? like
you're dead weight,
come
Marty.
on, Woolsey. Like, come on, translator. It's the same fucking pun. Like yeah. So I don't know, man.
Yeah.
Like it is, it's not actually affecting me very much during this because most of my playthrough is again, like having on cinema in the background and just kind of going through encounters because most of the game is not that stuff, but it suffers a lot in comparison to 4 and 6, which is like fucking masterpiece class in comparison to that. Like with how the cinematic presentation of 6, like the stakes, the characterization, like I can tell you about all those characters in 6, like what they're like. I cannot tell you what Lena is about.
Right.
You know, Lena's about nothing. Yeah. The void.
Yeah.
And that's what Exdeath is trying to return to.
Yeah.
Why do you want to return to the void when you just have 4 of them right here? You guys are on the same side. You know?
You should be best buds.
Yeah, like you guys are all fans of void. You know? Not like describe personality, non-participant. You know?
No, personality? No thanks.
Yeah, no thanks.
You know, this is something that we're
for me.
Yeah. But looking at just the themes of our coverage recently, I think we get into JAGs, or we find these common thoroughfares. And one thing here relatively recently that we put voice to is this rejection of a transactional approach to design or criticism.
Yeah,
it's it is a post hoc rationalization to say, oh, right, this part couldn't have been good because the other part was good. Yes, obviously there's budget that needs to be allocated. When you give something to one part of production, it has to be taken from somewhere else. But that is not to say that they couldn't have made any other choice.
Right? Yeah. Yep. You're not paying for the mechanics with a bad narrative.
Yeah.
Don't act like that. Don't treat it like that. Don't make excuses like that. Mm-hmm. Right. Like that is a weird, it comes from a place of defensiveness for something that you like. And it's not necessary to turn that into a trade. Mm-hmm. It's not.
Yes. So, it's just a step above what Final Fantasy 1 or Final Fantasy 3 had, where every character was just a character you could name and their appearance was just they basically had no dialogue, and their appearance was just the job that you had given them, right?
Yeah. Yep. There is they have a little bit more than that, as we mentioned. They have kind of a description.
Yes.
So instead of just being an absolute blank like fighter is, princess, amnesiac king, dude, and pirate, lady pirate is what we have. So the actual plot itself, very simple. The first portion of the game, you are kind of arbitrarily really kind of feeling like you're moving from crystal to crystal, and they just break for reasons.
Compare that to Final Fantasy IV, where the Baron army was on the move, and you heard rumors of this new lieutenant who replaced you named Golbez, right? And you saw the airships flying over the horizon toward Fabul.
Lord, the opening of this compared to 4 is absolutely gobsmacking. This does I don't know anything about the world this takes place in.
No.
Like there's no sense of like it having a sense of politics or things moving. Like 4 is so good at that.
Yeah,
like
it's kingdoms, and those kingdoms are just kind of stereotypes, but still good.
They have like a culture. Like it feels like there's a culture, and that kind of comes across in music and kind of how they speak,
the rulers,
and things like that.
Yeah,
the rule, exactly. The kings, their environment. Not the case here.
Right.
This is just arbitrary things happening for no reason. There's a little bit, you got to notice like there's an environmentalist streak, which the beginning there is. The crystals are cracking because the kingdoms are drawing extra power from them. And then that goes away.
Yep.
Like that's a MacGuffin. So it's, not actually what's happening. And then it becomes about this, instead of there being like a Act 5, goal, Zeromus situation, Exdeath shows up pretty early to just be like, I'm an ancient sealed demon from another world. It has nothing to do with the environment, really.
No.
It's just, and yes, he's a tree. So like you can make, the metaphor is still there, but it was explicit early on.
Yeah.
And then becomes a stretch afterwards. Real quick, just because I don't know where else to put this, right? Like you mentioned that you're kind of going from crystal to crystal for poorly conveyed reasons. This game does the worst job of any JRPG I can remember of not giving you direction.
Oh, it doesn't point you where you need to go.
Ever. No character will say it. Like, that is a big reason you talk to characters in towns, right? Yeah. In these games. Like, it's like, oh, they'll be like, hey, try this. Mm-hmm. And that happens maybe a fifth of the time in this game. But never does your party be like, okay, we have to go here. It's northwest.
Right.
Like, 90% of the time, and I am paying attention, like when I'm not watching on cinema, when I'm not doing battles, right? Mm-hmm. 90% of the time, what I would do is I would finish a thing, I'd pull up my map, and then look for the next glowing dot that I can actually get to.
Yes.
Go to the glowing dot, and then the plot would continue.
That's important.
And I'm on the third act, and that still is the structure.
Yes.
That crazy.
So I mean, it's worth saying that the world map is kind of weirdly a bigger mechanical part of this and a different means of conveyance. This again is something from this is also something from the Boss Fight book Chris Kohler wrote, but just in an interview with Hironobu Sakaguchi. For this one, they really leaned into the idea that the world map is a puzzle. And you go through conveyances like crazy. So like, I'm going to start out, I'm on a chocobo and it can do this and it opens up these places. It's a big deal when I get the boat and I can now be on the sea and then I find the black chocobo and all that.
Immediately sinks. Yes. Like, and then you go back to the people who built it and they go, eh.
Yeah. Like, so instead of just directions, what you have is just like, okay, I now can move and I'm supposed to press at the edges until I find some place that was inaccessible to me before.
Which is, so on paper is fine. Mm-hmm. It totally fucks up any sense of like narrative.
Yeah.
Because like one, you end up with things like it being conveyed to you that it's a big deal that you have a ship, and then the ship sinking and no one caring, which just doesn't feel right. But two, there is a sense of urgency to this game. Mm-hmm. You know, like your characters are meant to be preventing a catastrophe because it's a video game. The fact that they don't talk about where to go or discuss plans or anything, there's like no internalization or anything like that. The fact that Sakaguchi left that for just the player to kind of guess at totally undercuts the narrative, like what little narrative there is, and just means that I spend a lot of time wandering around getting into encounters trying to find these edges.
So urgency is weird, right? Because people always say, all right, so the world's ending, the meteor's hanging in the sky, and I can go spend 100 hours playing. Yeah, I can go breed chocobos and do races and stuff like that. That is one thing where it gives you the critical path and conveys the urgency to you. The other side of this is with if there is urgency, nothing is conveyed to you, and it is not your choice to dally around. It kind of doesn't matter if the urgency is real mechanically, as long as the feeling is there. Again, as a game story, the most basic thing that it needs to do is string together events. The events are not really strung together here. There is no propulsion from thing to thing.
Yeah. Yep. I want to feel like my characters care, even if I'm choosing not to care.
Yeah.
Like I'm gonna fall out for it. Like go rescue someone else's kid during a DLC rather than rescue my own kid.
Yeah.
I want to feel like my character feels it. Mm-hmm. Even if I'm choosing to ignore it, that's an acceptable break from reality.
Yeah.
It contributes to these characters just being arbitrary little morons.
Yeah.
In this, which contributes to a distancing feeling from the plot. Which, if this were purely a mechanical game, like an action game, or if this was like all a computer simulation or something, maybe that's fine. But it does want to trade on that drama. Mm-hmm. This game wants me. Sakaguchi very explicitly talks about how he wanted to try to see if he can make players cry, like in this game. Like I wrote all these dramatic scenes. I wrote Lena poisoning herself to feed the Drake. I wrote Golov dying and stuff. I wanted to make players cry. How can anyone cry at one of these things? Yeah. Like when they're so blank, and this is a big factor in how they feel blank, and a frustration when you're playing of just being like, oh God, the chocobo can't fly over mountains. Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Like I'll just go down the tunnel that it gave me to the next little glowing spot on my map. Also, super minor pet peeve. You find the world map in the first world and it's like kind of a big deal. When you get to the second world, you just have one. There's nothing that happens.
Wait a minute, there's something on the back.
Yeah, and that would be foreshadowing if they said that, right, or something like that. But it just, you just have it.
Yeah,
they just like, oh, actually, no, who gives a shit? Let's just go. We don't know how to make these characters find the next place without opening up this map.
Yeah,
go. So,
yeah. Just while we're in other gripes, and I swear it's not all gripes. Like they're awesome encounters we're gonna get to when we talk about these jobs. I'm gonna come alive. We're gonna talk about the jobs as we get them. Too,
jobs are gonna be really fun.
We're
gonna talk about all of them. We're gonna talk about them once we get them.
Yeah,
in our experience with them, and that's the part of this game that shines.
Yes. Something that doesn't shine, especially in comparison to its neighbors in the series, is the music is not great. It feels like the loops are really, really short. The melodies do not get into you. It doesn't necessarily lend to a high drama or memorable moments that are, irrevocably linked to the stuff that happens there. And there's one standout track that everybody knows, Battle of the Great Bridge. We're not going to get to it this episode.
No, it is a wonderful track, though.
Yes.
Like that is a great track. That's the one that keeps getting remixed and stuff. It became associated with character. It's worth noting that it's the one that came forward, though.
Yes.
Whereas, like, if you wanted to, I feel like most people could probably hum or recall or pick out of a lineup 5 or 6 songs from Final Fantasy IV, 5 or 6 songs from Final Fantasy VI, like 10 songs from Final Fantasy VII. Like, this is some of Uematsu's like worst work.
Yes.
Like it is, and the behind the scenes stuff, like he doesn't think of it that way. He wanted to redo and enrich this in the face of hearing ActRaiser. Like he was just like, oh, I need to up my game. But it's not the production that is bad for this. It's the compositions.
Yeah.
Like they're just not very strong pieces of music. The overworld theme on this compared to 4 is stomach churning. Like the overworld theme in the first world of this, it's just really, really bland.
Yeah.
And then like when you go into a castle, it's like royalty theme, and it just sounds like someone. It reminds me a lot of the Mr. Show John Falluza sketch.
Oh yeah,
where the guy is just like he's just making up marching band music on the spot. Like how anyone can just kind of do that, and it feels like, hey, make up a royalty theme.
Yeah,
like the Battlefield theme is fine, but not as good.
But it is almost like just it is like a two note different remake of other battle themes.
Yeah. Same thing with the cave theme. The cave theme and the Cave of Mist have a lot in common.
The regular boss music is just it is a knockoff of the Four Fiends fight songs. Stuff like that. Yeah. It feels really phoned in. And, who knows, is that linked to some of the other shortcomings presentationally, thematically? When no town is as distinct as Mysidia is, does it make sense for any of the music to rise to the level of how good the Mysidia town song is?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it would, but it's also is Mysidia, like Mysidia is distinct on its own, right? But if you take something like the elf town in Final Fantasy IV, I can't the Water Crystal, right? I can't remember the name of the town right now. That was extremely distinct as a town, but a lot of that is just the music, right? So there is an element where those two things can shore each other up. Like that music is very unique in that game, and it gets across that culture. They just don't do that in this game. There's like there's like this Irish jig. Like during this time, Uematsu was spending a lot of time playing traditional Irish music and only listening to traditional Irish music, which is like weird flex. But there's that Irish jig song that comes in to a town. And when I first got to it, I was like, oh, that's what this town is. Because Final Fantasy has trained me to do that. And then I got to another town that had the same soundtrack. And I realized that first town was another just anonymous Final Fantasy V town that has no traits. So it's pretty weak. It feels like to me, and I don't know if this is true, it feels like the graphics are a step down from 4 to me, and it could just be the character sprites on the screen. Like looking at like Bart seems more simple to me, and maybe it's because of like the clothes he's wearing or whatever, but like your little character sprites on the screen seem a little bit smaller. And again, I don't know if that's actually the case, and a little less detailed than they did in 4.
But I think maybe just like weaker designs in general.
Like just not as strong, and they need to design them so they could wear all these outfits. So I get it, but it just the look of it is a little bit more anonymous, and the sound of it is a little bit more anonymous, the same way the story is. So this game, we mentioned the name. This is the scenario design was a collaboration between Sakaguchi and Katase, who is the director of Final Fantasy Adventure, who would go on to do Chrono Trigger and Final Fantasy VII, and others kind of passed the torch. And they would literally pass scenes back and forth to build them out.
Right.
So Sakaguchi did the melodramatic. Katase added more humor and action.
Yeah. Which probably contributed to why this game does not feel very cohesive.
Yes.
When you're collaborating like that, usually there is, it's like working on a bill in Congress. There's a reconciliation period where you go back over it and smooth and make sure stuff is connected. It is not apparent that happened here.
Very kind of exquisite corpse.
Yes. Amano, he did the concept art for this, and Kazuka Shibuya converted them into sprite work. As always, that is notable here because all 4 characters have to be drawn. At least their battle sprites have to be drawn with 22 jobs originally, 26 after they added the Game Boy Advance classes. So that was pretty difficult, and it took about a year to get all of that done.
Lots of sprite work, and it is nice that your characters change with their job, right? Like that's a very nice touch, and I'd miss it if it was gone.
Yes, yeah, and there is a little bit of characterization there, like Krill. When you make her the Beastmaster or whatever, and she's wearing cat pajamas.
Yeah,
like
very cute.
That's fun.
Yep. So some other Square kind of up and comers got their start here. So Nomura, the hated Nomura, bug tested on 4, but designed enemies here.
Yes,
and then Mitsuda designed sound effects for it, who would also go on to do
Chrono Trigger, Chrono Cross,
Chrono Trigger, like music. So it's kind of neat that like they got their start here. The team is very satisfying for the team. They enjoyed it quite a bit. Sakaguchi said it was his favorite Final Fantasy game until 9. Sold incredibly well. In Japan, their first big hit.
Yes.
There.
Yeah.
And let's talk about different releases though, because this is for American audience, this is a very different kind of experience and release. Schedule.
No, this was a basically mythical. Just people had heard that this game was in development, that it had come out in Japan, and then it just never came to the West initially. It took 7 years for this to happen. And something similar happened with Final Fantasy 2 and 3, the Famicom, NES ones. Those also didn't get a release here. So people had to, either wait or get a fan translation, which is apparently famously good.
Yeah. So they one of the reasons why Square didn't release this as like Final Fantasy 3 here is because they thought that this would be too complicated. For American audiences. And that's why Mystic Quest, one of the reasons why Mystic Quest came out.
Yes.
As kind of a primer on the genre here. It's a very conventional piece of wisdom, and developers acted on it, that Americans were too stupid kind of to get the genre, right? And that's why we have Final Fantasy 4 Easy Type. And stuff like that. Like that is a piece of wisdom I would love to interrogate. Right? Like, especially when it is I don't know, like people were playing the Bard's Tale and shit.
Yeah.
Like it's not that it's too complicated. Like that is a weird kind of condescending attitude towards it.
Yeah.
And it feels to me like I've talked about before, when I was younger, I used to think I was smarter because I was playing role-playing games as opposed to action games, and how horseshit that is.
This is slower, so it's better.
Yeah. This involves reading and not dumb reflexes. Whereas in fact, like it's Dragon Quest, like the patience, anyone can beat it. Like you just put in the time. It's not smarter. Like the genre has become less for me as I've gotten older, but the idea that it's smarter, it's surprising to me. One, like that misconception that I was under as a kid, was shared by like developers and localizers and people choosing whether to put something out, and that it's still repeated by people today. Like as a thing, like, oh yeah, the American audiences couldn't handle this. Like they couldn't handle Final Fantasy 4 where each character had one unique ability. Are you kidding me?
About?
How could they handle that? And it's like, well, I don't know.
Kiraga?
Like
1, 2, 3, please.
Like it's not, the audiences were not too dumb for it. They maybe just were not interested in it.
Yeah. So,
like when 7 came along and made the big breakthrough, right? Like 7 was this huge breakthrough. It's not that, I wonder if those same people, if they think that audiences suddenly got smarter, or if they think that 7 with its like masterful presentation was just enough to get people into it.
I have no idea. I think that maybe they were leaning on that. Obviously with the marketing, they knew they had something with those cutscenes, and things of that nature. So the decision seems informed by the fact that, when Dragon Quest came over here, nobody bought it, so Nintendo basically had to give it away.
Yeah.
The original Final Fantasy, it wasn't necessarily great shakes in sales when it first came out, despite huge marketing pushes or whatever. But it's important to note that even on console, they were putting out Ultima games, Wizardry. There were versions of Wizardry that were available on NES as well. Maybe it's the contrarian in me, but like if they had leaned into the complexity, it might have been more interesting for people, who were devoted to that kind of crunchier
to those kind of games.
Yeah.
Like that's what I think too. Like you could have gotten some, consoles were cheaper than PCs, at the time. Like I can imagine a PC gamer at the time who is playing Ultima 4, not on console, seeing a complicated game come over on console and having that be a reason to buy it.
Yeah.
I think the assumption that people were too dumb is a little bit condescending.
Yeah.
Right. Like I'm not a national, far for me to sound like nationalist about this, right? Like it's not about a pride in the nation. It's just kind of like an irritating move.
Yeah.
Like, oh, this didn't sell well. People are too dumb for it. Like it's not like you're overselling the complication of this.
Yes.
And you are underselling the appetite for complication that is just inherent in people.
Yeah.
It is not a nation-based thing.
Yeah.
There are, like, as I get older, right? Like, and I'm like, man, it'd be cool if Persona games were in 120 fucking hours. I recognize that there are lifestyle differences that make that a thing, right? So, like, I understand that portable JRPGs that take 1 million hours are very appealing to a Japanese audience, specifically partly because of, like, subway rides.
Yeah.
Like everyone's got their nose in the new Persona. Everyone's got their nose in the new Dragon Quest when one of those comes out. I get that, and that's not, we don't have as much of a commuter culture here, like nationally, right? Like there are cities where that's true. I get that there are differences like that, but I just accept it as wisdom for a lot of my life. Most of my life I thought about video games. That's like, oh yeah, we got Mystic Quest because we're fucking idiots.
Yeah, we weren't ready for it.
Yeah, and I didn't like Mystic Quest, and I was just like, what's going on? Like that dissonance I didn't really understand. And the actual answer is I'm not a fucking idiot. And like I would have been fine with the hard type Final Fantasy 4. I would have been good with any of this. I would have ate up Final Fantasy 5. It's just maybe these are niche games because it's kind of a niche genre.
No.
And just because it is this huge hit with this kind of like different culture and stuff, it doesn't have to be that, oh, these people it's too complicated.
Yeah.
All they can understand is their arcade and their sports games. Like there's something to that's a little bit hinky to me.
Yeah.
I
don't know. I don't like it when anybody says that somebody is dumb because of where they were born.
Yeah. Or just like because of what their tastes are.
Yeah.
Like especially once like actually looking at the games involved, like having played Final Fantasy 4 hard type, and just being like, well, this is not actually very complicated. Like, I don't know. It's interesting. So that's the big reason why this didn't come over.
Yes.
Like, and then by the time that they could have made it happen, the ship had kind of sailed. They were going to send it over as a kind of a spin-off game called Final Fantasy Extreme. There is that fan translation we met. There was going to be a PC port.
Yes.
That's where the translation came for the PlayStation version.
Right.
Which is not the fan translation. The fan translation is apparently very good. I've not played a fan version of this. So this game kind of rose up with emulators. The first time we officially got it was 1999, which they just took that PC game translation, which is not good.
Right. Yeah. Very incomplete. The enemy names are all truncated and stuff like that. It's just not a good localization. And that was also not helped. So this is how I first played it. And those PS1 compilations, Final Fantasy Anthology and Final Fantasy Chronicle, are a little bit infamous, a great deal infamous actually, because of how technically unsound they are as well. Famously, they're, all of them have loading times when you go to the menu. And the reason for that is they are being emulated on the system. And the PlayStation, from what I understand, the PlayStation 1 can only hold so much in its memory. And so it was holding a running copy of the emulator in the memory. And when it had to load something else, it dumped it, went and loaded the content and then loaded the emulator back up again.
Yeah.
So like
it
was kind of doing this like the chicken corn fox on a boat puzzle.
Yeah.
But with video game ones and zeros.
Yeah. Yeah. They are horrible. That's the first way I played it as well. Those versions are really bad, even though I played through all of them.
Mm-hmm.
I played through 4 again on those. I played through Chrono Trigger on those. I played through Final Fantasy 1 and most of 2.
That's how I played. That was the way that I played Final Fantasy 5, 6, and Chrono Trigger.
Yeah.
That was my first exposure to those, because by the time I got interested, all of those were very, very costly on SNES.
Yep. The version that we both played, and what I consider to be the definitive version, if not just for the portability, is the GBA version. I love those GBA ports of 4, 5, and 6.
Yep.
Even though they have sound issues, they're still my favorite way to play those games.
The shortcomings that people bring up, accepting the encounter rate, are all things that I don't care about necessarily or don't bother me. And it would take an awful lot to override the benefit of the portability for me.
I couldn't find any. Did you find information? Is the encounter rate higher in the GBA, or is this just what the encounter rate is?
That is the commonly accepted knowledge. I have no idea if it's true.
Because it doesn't feel that different than my memories of the PS1 version to me. Yeah. It feels like basically the same encounter rate. I don't know if that's true, but it feels basically the same.
Yeah.
The version we're doing has extra content, extra jobs. I'm not going to do the bonus dungeons, the bonus bosses in this probably, just to be fair, or just to warn you, to let you know.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll get a wild bug and I'll try it, but I don't think I'm going to grind up a good team for it.
Yeah.
So we'll still talk about them just kind of in broad strokes.
I've done them. I did them back. Final Fantasy V is really heavily associated with my one terrible year in college in computer science, to the point where I was so over it, and I knew I was transferring, so it didn't really matter. So me being a dick sitting in the back of a chemistry class, just playing this instead of paying attention to the lecture.
And the new jobs we will talk about.
Yeah.
Because those are interesting. Also, just as a real quick thing, I went and so I ran through this streak of GBAs.
Yeah,
it was kind of a bummer. My old classic GBA, which Nintendo hardware is obviously legendarily sturdy.
Yeah.
Fucked up. The off button, the give on the off button, the little, you have to push a little resistance to turn it off.
Yeah.
Fucked up. So now it just turns off if you brush it. So that's no good. So my original GBA Advance SP, is fucked up. I bought a new one online and then I was like, okay, well, this will be there for when I play Final Fantasy V. Waited a while, and the buttons are really sticky.
Ugh.
Not sticky full of cum, but sticky they click unsatisfying.
Okay.
Because they've got some schmutz in there. And I was like, well, I could take this apart. And then I decided to finally take this opportunity to get myself a GBA Micro, something I've always wanted. And I love it.
Nice.
So just throwing that out there is I love that little guy.
Yeah.
It's very easy to take with me. It's made this game very easy to just play some counters on buses, things like that. And I love that little piece of hardware.
Oh, it's the best screen. I think that outside of the Switch, it's the best screen that Nintendo's put out.
It's super tiny, but it does look really good.
Yeah.
And it has a headphone jack, which the SP doesn't have.
Correct.
So it's nice for buses in case I happen to be on a big bridge at the time. Living in Big Bridge City, Portland, Oregon.
I had a similar problem. So my Game Boy Advance SP went to fire it up and it wouldn't turn on. I was like, okay, well, it probably needs charge. I went to charge it and I got 5 minutes of play out of it. So I had to order a new battery.
What is this, a Game Gear?
It was a $10 fix, which is nice. And my Game Boy, my GBA SP, my light blue GBA SP has a new lease on life. So
that's great. Yeah, I haven't gotten rid of either of my old GBAs because they have sentimental value, obviously. Yes. But the guy who plays drums in my band, he loves retro games. He has a huge basement full of NES games I need to go look at some point. But he's got a couple kids, and my plan is to give them to his kids.
Oh, yeah.
So he can get them into the stuff.
Nice.
Apparently they love watching him play the new Dragon Quest. He just sits down and just plays it, and they just sit there and stare.
That's fun.
While he just kind of sits there and stare, and it sounds pretty great father and son. Father and sons. This was also released on phone.
Yeah.
There's a mobile version of it that almost all the Square mobile ports looks like absolute hot ass.
Yeah.
Hot butthole. It is just an ugly game. Everything is too smooth. The big thing with those, and this is a petty complaint, is the fonts. The fonts drive me nuts in those things.
Yeah.
Ugh. It's an ugly font.
It's no good. The characters, they look like kind of knockoff Korean MMO assets.
Yes. Too smooth, a bunch of real dolls running around.
not great. Just give me chunky sprites. I think that like those have a universal appeal, says old man who has never interrogated his nostalgia.
I think it's a fairly common, I don't think very many people are going to bat for the graphics of those. Like I've heard people who like those versions just because it's the game, right?
Yeah.
So you probably run into a little bit of like me playing Deus Ex on PS2. Mm-hmm. Like it's still good. Mm-hmm. It's, it's Deus Ex. Like at the end of the day, it's still Deus Ex. It's just not the best version of Deus Ex.
Yeah.
No.
That's the one you get on Steam as well.
Yes.
There's Jeremy Parrish did a good article. If you just do like how to play Final Fantasy V, Jeremy Parrish, he gave like a good rundown of the different versions. Apparently, like his suggested canonical version is to get a patched Super Famicom ROM, but the Game Boy Advance version is A-OK and just fine.
Yeah, I like the extra jobs.
Yep.
I'm not, I don't always get them, and portability is extremely important to me to this genre.
Yes.
Right. Like if I can't play this in bed, I'm probably not going to play it.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a direct sequel to this in the adaptation decay I've been dreading my entire life. The 1994 anime Final Fantasy Legend of the Crystals. Reading about the plot of that for the first time for this, I knew that it was not considered good.
Yeah,
I had no idea how horny it is. At one point, the crystal, like one of the crystals, migrates up the main character's butthole.
Yes,
and then there's all these scenes of the character staring at her glowing ass because anime.
Yep.
It's a horny genre, especially for young girls. Mm-hmm. And this anime is no exception.
Yeah, no, I also went and just kind of like read some summaries because I was considering like, hey, does it make sense to do that for adaptation decay? It's like, no, am I going to push for it? Because I remember watching it when I was too little to understand the horniness.
You didn't know what a butt was.
I was butt blind. Nobody had showed me.
All butts look the same to me. I'm butt blind.
No, but I was looking, I was like, and just I got to the phrase like plot significant panty shot, and I was like, do we want to do that? We haven't discussed it.
Skip that.
Yeah,
like it would be like, yes, it would be kind of a fun slaughter.
Yes,
but what would happen is at some point
we would make a generalization.
We'd make some generalization. Someone would get very mad at me or mad at us, right? And
then they get mad at you. They don't get mad at me.
I don't know what it is. So you say mean things too about stuff. But they would get mad at me about something, and then it would just be like I'd get added. It would just be it'd be throwing a little friction grenade into the future.
Yeah.
To watch a movie I don't want to watch, and it wouldn't be even like I don't know how many jokes we'd make. I think it'd be a lot of incredulous. Like, I mean, how do you even make a joke about like the power of the crystal goes into her butt? Mm-hmm. Like that's already kind of a joke, but it's not meant to be a joke. Like I'm sure there are people out there who like that thing. Mm-hmm. Like it's supposed to be serious.
It's also not generally well regarded either.
No. Yeah, I understand this is not like everyone's excited because Final Fantasy Legend of the Crystals is coming to Netflix with a new translation. Like I understand it's not that, right?
Yeah.
But it's it's also when they say direct sequel,
it's like 200 years in the future.
200 years in the future with almost all entirely new characters and stuff. Mm-hmm. It's that weird like. It's like a direct sequel the way that Vagrant Story is a direct sequel to Final Fantasy Tactics, or the way Final Fantasy 12 is a sequel to Final Fantasy Tactics, which is to say there are some words in common.
Yeah.
But the tone, characters, everything is different.
Yeah.
Except for that it's technically the same.
Mm-hmm.
Much like the main character is probably technically of age, even though she looks extremely young. If you look at her stat card, I'm sure she's 19 and she looks 14 because that's what happens.
Yeah.
Technicality, the best kind of right.
Although, like, I do associate that with like a positive memory because, going to Blockbuster and I just like venturing away from the SNES section and like, just going back like, oh, there's a whole rack of cartoons. Final Fantasy. Yeah. Being probably 8-9 years old and being like, oh my God, I made the discovery of a lifetime. There's a Final Fantasy movie.
How on earth are there 4 Final Fantasy videos and it's this, The Spirits Within, Advent Children, and like Rise of the King Baby or whatever the Final Fantasy 15 one is. Kingsglaive. How is that true? Like for how is there not another Final Fantasy anime that we could do that would actually just adapt the fucking thing?
Yeah.
Because I would be down for that. Like I would love to I would do a Final Fantasy cartoon.
Yeah.
For the thing if it wasn't about panties.
Yes.
Like get these fucking panties off my eyes.
It's a bit of a deal breaker. It is not the particular avenue or flavor of anime that I want to go in for, understand all the caveats, genre, it's a medium, not a genre, etc. Down the line. Just that is a series of tropes that is never ever going to work for me and actively turns me off.
I do not want to see a panty one. Unless it is somebody who looks of age and is somebody it is non-gratuitous. Plot significant panty points. Fuck me. Get the panty shots. No thank you. I'm
not it is cursed, not blessed. So let's go ahead and get started with the main body of the game. Again, we are going up through World 1. So when they hop through the portal, that is where this is going to cut off.
Oh, yeah. Yep. So this starts with, there's like an attract mode when you start the game. It talks about the crystals power the elements of the world, and everyone is noticing the wind is dying down.
Yes.
And we get this opening cutscene where the King of Tycoon, which is, I love the idea of
King Tycoon.
King Tycoon, the video game that's where you just train kings. So you sell and buy kings. Yeah.
Tycoon.
Yeah. So the King of Tycoon is getting ready to mount his dragon when his daughter Lena asks why he's leaving. He says he needs to discover why the wind has stopped by going to the Wind Shrine.
Yes. And elsewhere, we have this pirate captain named Ferris notice that the wind has changed, and also a man named Galef is in a cave, and he steps onto a glowing panel, which sets up this causation that should be apparent. Like, the montage is really clunky. When he steps on the panel, the crystal shatters.
Yeah. There's a load-bearing panel.
Yeah.
of some kind. And then we see this crystal shatter as the King of Tycoon approaches it.
Yeah.
And then we're introduced to Bartz, famously known as Butts.
Yes.
In the Final Fantasy IV version.
Butsu. Yes.
Butsu. I prefer Bartz just because it doesn't,
it's fine.
I don't know. But it doesn't sound as silly. Like, I don't think Bartz is a great name.
Yeah.
But if I imagine a world without Simpsons, it might just sound like a percussive consonant bomb. It
avoids the juvenile laugh of a character named Butts. Then again, it was fine. It didn't necessarily hamper my enjoyment of it when I played the original translation
with Butts.
Yeah, with Butts. Well, whatever. Butts is a wanderer, and he's got his buddy, his chocobo Boko, who is apparently very important to him until he has to abandon him outside of a cave.
The one thing, I'm going to point out when this game does humor well.
Yes.
Right? Because I think generally it doesn't. This isn't until next episode, but the reunion with Boko in World 3, I think, is laugh out loud funny.
Okay.
And it's the only part I think is laugh out loud funny in the game so far, but it is genuinely like very funny to me. And I don't know how much of it's intentional. We'll get to it. I think it's very funny. Here, it is, I thought it'd be kind of neat to like have a Final Fantasy protagonist that had like a steed.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I've done Final Fantasy Tactic run-throughs where I keep a chocobo, like the one you rescue. I've kept him and just been like, this is my horse.
Yeah.
I'm a knight. This is cool. That's not what happens here. We leave him very soon.
Yes.
This meteor falls at a nearby mountain pass, and he goes to go investigate. When he gets there, Lena's there. She's unconscious. And some goblins are approaching her. I'm going to go back and forth between Lena and Lena. For some reason, I always read it as Lena. I don't know if that's
Lena's a name.
Yeah. And Lena isn't, so I apologize. The anonymous quality of these characters cannot be overstated, and it even applies to this kind of thing.
Yes.
So, like, and this is the most anonymous of the 5.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah. And also, after Bartz saves Lena, they find an unconscious old man who knows nothing about himself aside from the fact that he is named Galef.
Yes. So Galuf overhears that Lena is going to the Wind Shrine. He says, well, we have to go. I'm going to go with you. Bart's like, is going to be like, well, I'm going to go do whatever the hell I'm doing trapped in this mountain range that I can't get out of. But Boko insists that he goes.
Yes.
Boko is a hero.
Yep. But Boko saves the world. Saves the worlds. Yeah. So we've got our 3 characters together, and we are in the portion of the game where we're wandering around having random encounters, but nobody has jobs. So we are not working toward anything. And all you can do is tappa, attacka.
This is so boring.
Yeah.
This is so boring. You pass through this cave to get there. That is, again, just teaching you about job, item, and run. Yeah. Or not job, attack, item, and run. That's by this water line. When you step out, we see this ship moving across the water, which is crazy because there's no wind. This is something where I feel like if this were Final Fantasy IV, like the fact that the wind hasn't been coming would be more remarked upon. Yes. Like, oh, this would cripple the economies. Like, there's not shipping and stuff like that. This doesn't feel like that kind of world. No. So we go back into the cave, and deep inside, we find this pirate hideout. Yeah.
With, skull and crossbones flags up, they really lean into the aesthetic.
Very much so in the PS1 version, where it does it in the dialogue a lot.
Oh yeah, like Ferris. It is hilarious. Like later on when Ferris has like, "Yar, you salty bastards."
Yeah, like you're a princess. Stop it. like you've been hit on the head. We're gonna go put you in palliative care. So you try to steal the ship, but Captain Ferris stops you. Right. At this point, presenting and assumed to be a man.
Yes. And Lena reveals, saying like, okay, well, don't like kill us or anything. I'm the princess of Tycoon. We know this from seeing the beginning of the game. It's a shock to everybody else. Yes. And she basically says like, hey, can we use your vessel for the good of the kingdom? We need to figure out what's going on, why there's no wind.
Yeah, this is a big deal. Yeah. And ordinarily you think, Ferris might say no, but she notices Lena's pendant. And says, okay, everyone go into the brig. And then she reveals in kind of cutscene, she has a matching pendant. So there's a connection between these two characters. Next morning, she agrees to take everybody to the Wind Shrine. And this is how we learn how the ship is moving, because it's on the back of a water dragon named Sildra. Yes. Who carries it. Yeah.
So that is why this can move. So we stop by this small town Tool, I think it is, Tule. Yep. It's anonymous. This is kind of funny because you get off, and this is the only time where they really factor in the fact that you're roaming with a pirate band. Like you get out, and Ferris leads her men out to carouse, and they take over the inn bar.
Right, which is clearly a nod to Final Fantasy 1. Yes. Right, like there's a lot of different Final Fantasy 1 parallels. Yes. To this, which again, you chose jobs in that as well. Even though you chose them at the beginning, going to the first town, being overtaken by pirates. I think they call them the Warriors of Light. Yes, the Galuf's old crew. So there's Final Fantasy 1 ties here, but just as a reminder, Final Fantasy 1 has a crazy time loop plot. It is not as simple as it seems, like narrative wise. Like, yes, there's very little narrative, but what's there is kind of neat. So you go carouse, and Bartz and Galuf walk in on her while she's sleeping and emerge with these hearts over their heads. Yes. This is the first piece of foreshadowing that Ferris is actually a lady, or that these guys are into dudes. Yeah. Either or, depending on what age you're coming at this from and how much you know.
Yeah. So common trope. Both the cross-dressing woman who wants to fit in, to exercise any kind of power, and the people who are unaware of that and are attracted to them anyway.
There is a missed opportunity with that where we don't. So when that happens, and I'm not expecting this to go deep in this game, right? Right. When that happens, there's usually at least a little bit of attention paid to a patriarchy, right? Or there a reason why she couldn't just make it as a lady. Yeah. And that kind of doesn't happen in this game. No. I think she might say that she chose to pose as a man for that reason.
Yeah, she says it would just make living on a ship full of pirates easier.
Yeah. But nobody says even her crew is not particularly shocked. Nobody in the world, this does not seem like a particularly sexist world. Largely because it doesn't seem like any particular kind of world,
there's no ideology.
It does not seem like a world. Yeah. We're not to that point yet. There's not feelings.
Right.
There's no biases, no feelings, nothing.
There needs to be a world first before there's any kind of power dynamic.
We're still at the first stage of Spore when it comes to narrative design. So
So the next day we can gather together and sail over to the Wind Shrine. The king's attendants are in a panic. The crystal is broken. That's why there's no wind, and the shrine is full of monsters, and King Tycoon has not come back.
Yeah. So we go through this other dungeon. Extremely basic. We don't have any jobs or abilities yet. This happens in most dungeons in this game, but I just want to mention it. I think the dungeon design in this game is really rotten. It's not good in the genre in general, I think. And the reason why is because it's either you're presented with a T intersection. You can't see the end of either intersection or the end of either path. One ends in a treasure, one ends in the way forward, and you just have to guess and hope you get the treasure first.
Yes.
That has not been improved upon for the entirety of the genre.
No.
Ever since the very beginning. This is kind of what happens, right?
So
that sucks. The other kind of dungeon there is you're solving a puzzle while random encounters happen. This game does both. Like there are some conveyor belt puzzles, some elevator puzzles that come later. These make random encounters maddening. Through this, like it is bonkers bad.
Yeah.
And it's very weird.
It is very clear that the dungeons are just here to put empty space for you to move through in order to have random encounters. So you can level up for the bosses.
Even though you're not leveling up your jobs yet.
Yeah.
What if there was like a narrative conceit that like once the crystals were awakened, it awakened like monsters or something? So I don't know, like, or the jobs came back and that, like, I mean, I just feel like there could have been a way to make this not as boring as it is.
Yeah.
When you get to the top, we're attacked by a boss, a wing raptor. And he can hit everybody, but he doesn't have any tricks. It's not the traditional Final Fantasy don't attack while he's in his shell.
Right.
Attack
while the tail's up. Yeah.
Yeah, that comes later.
Yeah. So you get to the top and you find, okay, the wind crystal is shattered. And then starts a cutscene. The other existing crystals call out and confer their elemental power onto the characters. This has nothing to do with their abilities or anything. It is like, Bartz, you get the power of wind and the rambunctiousness that comes with it. Lena, you have water, etc. That doesn't really mean anything. That just means that they can get jobs from the crystal shards.
Yeah. Yep. So King Tycoon appears here. He appears on the pedestal, explaining that you guys are now the Warriors of Light. You must fight an awakening evil, and then zip zaps away.
Yes.
And then the shards kind of creepy encroach on us.
They move like Golbez's hand.
They move exactly like Golbez. That's exactly it, actually. That's very good, yeah. And then they slowly just kind of shoot into you, and then it says like Spirit of a Warrior, and then tells you the job you get. And we get our first set of jobs, which we should talk about.
We ought to, yeah.
Yeah.
So these are going to be, like we said, you get the basic ones first, and the more complicated ones come later. But we've got a couple of different kinds of casters and a couple of different kinds of kind of melee classes with one utility thrown in there as well.
Yeah. I would say there's two utilities here. Like one of them's a caster, but I'd call it a utility one.
Oh yeah, that's correct.
Yeah. So it's kind of two and two and two. The fighting classes we get this time are Knight and Monk, and they are basically defense or DPS at this point. The Knight can equip heavier armor. He can cover his comrades when they are in critical status. At that point, and can eventually learn to wield a weapon with two hands to do more damage. Knights are pretty useful. Most of the kind of bummer about them, they're useful to have equipped. The kind of bummer as far as things you might go for is that most of their abilities are like equip shield, equip armor, which can shore up another enemy or another class, but it's not that exciting.
No, it's kind of like, okay, my caster can equip a shield now. Cool, I guess. It is not a new thing to do. It doesn't feel like it opens up an awful lot. Monks are really good. I like monks quite a bit.
Monks are much more exciting.
Just they feel a little bit like a crutch class, but I'm perfectly fine using them in the beginning, just because they have the barehanded ability, and they get 2 attacks. So that means even if they miss one, you still have a chance to do half damage. Which is nice, and barehanded is really good as an adjunct skill to put on if you are trading up a caster, so they can have something else to do besides spending MP to cast something or guarding.
Sure. Until some kind of later abilities that shore that up.
Yeah.
Monks are very good. They get some utility abilities later that I just frankly am never going to equip because I'm going to equip other stuff.
I'm not going to do chakra. It's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, and this is that difference between this and tactics, whereas tactics, where the entire monk caboodle is one menu command, it's awesome having chakra.
Yeah.
It's awesome having these things. Here, it's like I'm never going to put that on another class. Like the complexity of this game is not overstated because it is very complex. And it's possible to beat the game with any combination. I'm sure it's possible to beat the game easily with every character having chakra as their side ability.
Yeah.
But that's just for added challenge. It's not very like efficacious. There are a lot of abilities that are not fun and also not very powerful, very potent.
It's worth saying, because I forgot to put this in the generalities. This is a really popular game for challenge runs. Famously, there's the 4-job challenge that goes on every summer. A lot of people are 4-job fiesta. Sorry, that is an event that a lot of people in our community actually participate in, and it's fun to read stories about it. I've never had the gumption to try it.
The reading about it is interesting because it sounds like the kind of thing I might want to do because I like challenge runs and I like breaking these kind of games, but it makes me wish that there was a tactics one just because the gameplay would be better. Like when I've read a lot about 4-job Fiesta, it's neat how they think around the problems. So like the way that 4-job Fiesta works is for each crystal, you get assigned a job.
Yeah.
And that's the only one those are the only ones you can use. You get through the game with 4 jobs and they're random. So you might get something kind of crappy. So it makes these, ordinary parts of the game feel like bottlenecks, and bottlenecks seem like near impossible. The frustrating thing to me is like the thought that goes into getting past those bottlenecks is very interesting. The action tends to be a lot of like grinding up money to buy rods you can break, or like buy your way out of problems, or kind of like grind your way out of problems.
Yeah.
Which I just don't want to do. Like it's an interesting thought, but it feels like all these problems have been kind of solved.
Yeah.
To me. So I'm not taking that away from anybody who enjoys doing it. And it obviously raises money for a good cause. Like it's a neat thing. It doesn't seem fun to me just because of, everything like when you're playing a JRPG, every nail looks like a grind, or something like that. Like it just, I just have to get a bunch of money to buy a bunch of rods and get through this.
Yeah. But yeah, monks at the highest levels, you can unlock counter, which is a really good passive
Counter's
ability.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah. I put counter on almost all my fighters.
Yeah. Additionally, its highest level unlocks are bonuses to HP, which actually does get useful.
Yeah. Well, the freelancer class. So monks are good. Blue mages in the past I have trucked with. This playthrough I'm not really trucking with.
They get really powerful spells, but the task of getting them is it is onerous.
Yeah, I think so. And they're the key to unlocking quick grinding.
Yeah. Right.
So like even just going through the little bit of, the little bit of work to give all your guys level 5 death will pay off in terms of training.
Yeah.
Right. But I'm dedicated to, I want to play with this game. This game is like without spending a bunch of time in Galif's basement fighting statues. Right. Like I want to play the game as intended. I don't want to necessarily like grind myself into being OP.
Yeah.
And but blue mages are the key for that. You get a wide variety of abilities. Yeah. Like they're neat. It just takes a lot of investment.
Yeah. Really powerful stuff. I think you get Mighty Guard, you get White Wind, you get Aqua Lung, all those good things.
The classic Strago's greatest hits. The Thief is a little bit of an odd one. The Thief, obviously, so it's a dex fighter, so not very strong, not particularly like hardy, very quick. Has some kind of weird utility abilities, almost all of which I think should be innate and you should be able to assign as one thing.
Yes.
The times where I feel like there might be a secret passage, I don't know where it's at, and having to go in the menu to equip the support ability to find passages drives me nuts.
Yeah.
You should just be able to, do that easier, I think.
Yeah.
In the original version, being able to sprint is tied to this.
Yes. And
now you can sprint, and you can sprint even faster with the Thief.
Yeah.
But used to even just running was an ability you had to equip. Think about that for a moment,
Not
everybody.
Good.
Yeah, that's a real rough one. And then you can steal, which is their principal thing. And this game has a really weird relationship with stealing. There are things that are worth stealing. Everyone has a rare and a common steal. So if you want that rare steal, you're using a guide or whatever, just be prepared to do a lot of fights.
Yeah.
Because it's hard to get. Even once you get the Thief Club, they're still hard to get.
Yeah.
And there are bosses that have unique things you can steal. So there's a lot of like, oops, I got the common thing. kind of restart.
Yeah.
And I'm never not going to be bothered with that. Like somebody told me recently that I'm going to die someday. So I'm not going to do that.
That's a funny joke. I like that.
I stole it from somewhere, but I don't know where.
Oh.
I apologize. I just want to give credit to the universe because it's not mine.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're a weird class that I did not spend very long with.
Mm-hmm. And it doesn't have, so like they feel similar. Like thieves in Final Fantasy Tactics also feel like a way station. Like, you're never going to have somebody just be a thief. Here, you don't have the incentive to kind of like load this guy up and truck through it.
And even though in like Tactics, at the very least, you get Steel Heart.
Yeah.
Which is very useful. And you can steal unique gear earlier and more often, I think.
Yeah. And then you have black mages and white mages, which can be talked about kind of in the same breath. We understand black mages are offensive. White mages are healing and defensive. They deal with buffs. Some white mage stuff and some black mage stuff has been offloaded onto time mages, which we're going to get later. And you're going to want to, like a good early game strategy for these is to unlock, level 1 or level 2, and then use that as, use that as an ability for a different class, to augment them, give you a little bit more, elemental firing power, basically.
Yep. I made the mistake of leaving characters in this for too long and just kind of like training way past what I could buy.
Yep. level 5 black mage.
Yeah.
Cool.
Like very early. Yeah. It's probably not useful at all. And I just, stopped paying attention for a minute because I was paying attention to my other classes. Like when you're just, when you only have these first set of classes, like, what else am I going to make them? This is my dedicated caster, eventually.
Yeah.
So there's no real reason for them to be a knight at this point. I'm not min-maxing the freelancer, so do you have like archetypes for the characters? Cause I definitely have like kind of a way that I tend to do it.
It's really funny. I don't know where this comes from, but like the ones that I end up choosing, it's down to just like standard archetypes. So like Bart is my melee fighter, Lena is my caster healer, and Galuf, I end up making like a blue mage, or like the weird utility ones. Like eventually it becomes a geomancer. And then Ferris is usually my hybrid. And when I look at playthroughs or I look at screenshots, that's what everybody does. So I don't know from whence that comes, aside from just, general archetype laziness.
Yeah.
That
makes a lot of sense. Ferris, like being a pirate, makes sense for a thief to me.
Yeah.
And then like initially, like it's like I basically the same lineup as you, but with Galuf, I kind of do a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
Because I know Galuf's going to switch.
Yes.
And what I ultimately want for Galuf is to be a fighter with a support ability that can heal. Eventually. And then in this time though, I ended up Ferris starting as the thief, and then eventually now I've got Ferris and Bart's on the same track, and they both have rapid fire dual wield. Which is just awesome.
That's what, 8 attacks, 4 attacks?
Yeah, it's 8 attacks. So very strong.
Yeah.
And it's like, I'm pretty close to getting Galuf there too. I might try to do a playthrough that is 3 of those and a healer.
Oh, yeah.
A healer summoner. And just ignore offensive magic.
Yeah.
That does, like, I lose time magic, and time magic is extremely good.
No.
Ferris is trained in time magic, but I love that, I love those 8 attacks.
Can't give it up.
Yeah, it's very hard to give it up for the golden grasp. So the next job we have to get, next set of jobs is the water crystal, which is nearby and in danger. I think somebody might say it. Nobody says where you're supposed to go. Again, you're just looking at them. You're just like, this way. And it just
like,
works.
we've got a boat now, and there's a wall that we can't get by. So. Yeah, let's just go. Let's just go and talk to people, I guess. I don't know.
Yep. So we're sailing. We go to in Tool. The town elder won't give us this key to the canal gate that would get us to Waltz. And at night, there's a little cutscene. Bart gets up and recalls his dad, who also fought to protect the crystals. The elder overhears him, kind of eavesdrops, and then gives him the key.
Right.
Really weirdly, he doesn't tell his companions this.
Nope.
Like,
it's just a surprise.
Yeah, when we get to the thing and got the key, everyone's like, "Holy shit!" It's like, well, why did you guys agree to sail there? You guys thought you were sailing to a locked door? Are you simple? What are you doing?
Well, no, I figured we just wander. Like that's what we do. We're the wandering.
Yeah, that's what
crew,
we do, right? We just kind of wander into adventure, right? Like what kind of idiots are going to stumble backwards into the intrigue in the world of Final Fantasy V?
Yeah. But you open the gate, and this gets you like a little boat dungeon that you go. Very little.
Yeah.
Something about sailing in this game that is a real bummer is that there are random encounters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Which there was in Final Fantasy 1 again, but 4 like wisely eschewed that.
Yes. Yeah. Being on a vehicle that should be enough. That should be enough to avoid it. But you go through and a whirlpool starts in the middle of this. And we have a boss fight as we are dragged into it. Carlabos is what this is called.
Carlabos.
Carl Abos.
Yeah. Carlabos, the co-founder of Fulbright. Who is like kind of a scorpion crab. Yeah.
The founder of Fulbright's a scorpion crab?
Yeah. You heard it here first, folks. YouTube thumbnail. So there's nothing really special. Again, the bosses are really doing the slow rollout.
Yeah.
But this boss can inflict paralysis on us. And it makes sense that they're doing slow rollout with status effects and stuff because we're very limited in our ability to combat status effects. So we get beyond this whirlpool, but Sildra is dragged under, rip, and we are set adrift. Temporary rip.
With no propulsion, we are just kind of floating around until we end up in the ship graveyard, the place where the tides take all marooned vessels, that is full of pirate zombies and stuff.
And in my mind, this is the coolest dungeon in this game as far, like at least disc 1 or whatever, right? Like this has character. This is a neat idea. Like all the ships end up stuck here. It creates this kind of dungeon and all the crew are dead and stuff. This is cool.
Yeah. You do the, you hop from boulder to boulder. Like the pathway is a little bit obscured that way. Yeah.
Huh. You have to pass through some water. You can just breathe underwater. And the party needs to change clothes. And this is where people, by deciding to spy on Ferris, to check.
Well, they rip her clothes off. They're like, she's like, I'll be fine. And like, no, you're going to get pneumonia.
Yeah, it is what are you, a virgin Claire? You're a virgin, like they're pressuring her.
Yeah,
I forgot about that. It's pretty fucked up. And they know too, which makes it even more fucked up.
Do they?
Well, Galuf and
I mean, they just got strange tingles from looking at a dude in bed.
I don't know what's implied. I feel like their propensity for tearing off the clothes is motivated by Hornt.
Maybe maybe it was unexplored Hornt because like it's treated as a reveal, and this is where she says like, I had to cross dress, I had to pretend to be a man, in order to live as a pirate. So like this is definitely a reveal, even if they maybe knew in their heart of hearts.
Yeah, they're kind of shocked. It's hard to kind of say exactly what, because I took the if they both came out with the heart thing and they were just attracted to a guy, like that's pretty progressive for this, even though they are going to just be like, actually it's a woman, so it's okay, which is who knows. I'm sure that there have been essays written on the gender politics of this game, because there is a prominent cross-dressing character, and I've seen people cite this character as like a good example of that. It's very hard for me to give this game credit for any characterization. Like it feels like now the characterization is over for Ferris. And we're an hour and a half into the game. Like, yes, she doesn't fit into court life. That's her other trait, because she's a pirate.
Yeah.
But we're kind of done with Ferris. Like Ferris is kind of solved now.
Yeah.
We find out her sister, but that's it.
So that's it for her.
Yeah.
Moving on. So beyond this, we can get to a cove, and just kind of some fog rolls in, and everybody sees visions of one of their loved ones. So Lena and Ferris, they see King Tycoon. Bart's, he sees his mom, Stella. And Galuf,
there's a Stella joke.
Yeah,
it doesn't. A streetcar named Desire joke,
but it is done at like a moment of high drama. Like,
it's very, very weird.
Galuf, he sees through this because the person that this evil force shows him, he doesn't recognize them because he's amnesiac. It's just this, little blonde girl. And so he snaps everybody else out of it, and it's revealed to be a siren's trap.
Yep. You're in a demon's cove. It's a siren's trap. And we fight our boss, Siren, who is kind of teaching us a little bit about living in undead states. And doing more status, but status we can deal with. So she poisoned your party. We can deal with poison. And switches between living and undead. Undead obviously heal from or get harmed by healing spells and get healed by drain, weirdly enough. After we beat Siren and get through, we're in the North Mountain, kind of looking around for a town. And there's no like apparent way to get to Waltz.
The earthquake has blocked the footpaths, and obviously nobody can sail without any wind. But when you walk into a house, you hear about a wind drake sighting. Up at the North Mountain.
Where the special grass grows. And Lena has a family drake. She's like, oh, there's wind drake. I know that. It's my wind drake.
It might be Fido or whatever his name is.
So they go up the mountain again, anonymous Final Fantasy dungeon. And halfway up, you're attacked by these poison arrows because there's this poacher named Magisa who's responsible, who I really thought was going to be more of a thing.
She's given a lot of characterization. I mean, watchword. She's a bandit, and she's like, aha, I've taken the princess hostage, etc. They make it seem like she's going to be a character at the very least. But no, just a boss fight. You kill her.
It's very weird.
And there's a lot of lead up to, like, part of the walkway collapses and Ferris, jumps across, falls down, comes up, throws a grappling hook across, makes a bridge. Like it's bizarrely choreographed. Insofar as there is any choreography at all. The Magissa fight is interesting. Because it is an example of something that happens in a cutscene carrying over into the game. Lena begins the fight poisoned. So you can choose to deal with that if you would like to. And Magissa is just kind of a standard hybrid fight. She does some casting, etc. About halfway through, she summons her strong friend, Forza, and casts regeneration on him.
She's a Forza friend. She's a good friend. If you're going to have a friend over, cast regen on him. Throw him a regen. Like, give him a little bucket of regen to, like, grab one out of there, like then some fun-sized Reese's cups. At the same time, and just let him go to town. Be a good friend. Like Magisa. Something I want to say in general about the bosses in this game that I think is cool and good is that they tend to be susceptible to status effects. Slow is really key to winning a lot of these boss fights. Not to take something that is good and turn it around. I think it's more it's one of the things I was thinking about with this, and I thought about this with Final Fantasy X. I don't remember if I said it. If your bosses are not going to be susceptible to status effects, don't even put status effects in your game. Because in a JRPG, there's no reason to poison a random encounter. You may as well just kill them. Like you can. They're all pretty easy for that. There are a couple of exceptions, but 99% of them, you just murder them, right? You'd rather just be doing straight damage. Status effects should be for bosses. And the fact that it is like an industry, a genre standard, like 75% of bosses in JRPGs are immune to status effects is just gobsmacking.
Like they don't have to be vulnerable to instant death. Right. But like, I should be able to silence a caster to get an advantage, right? Maybe it doesn't last very long. Maybe if they're resistant to it, it lasts for 3 turns instead of 5, something like that. Let me poison people. Let me, do all of these things.
Let me counteract their advantages because they are breaking the rules. They have advantages. They can act more frequently than I can, do things like that. And counteracting those is strategy. Like that's video games. Right? Like that's you playing a video game is you strategizing to get past this problem. When you can't do that, when it is just this kind of DPS race, because you can't do anything other than just do damage, it's not very exciting. Like it's not a very interesting way to design a boss fight. And they do a little bit with like elemental weaknesses in most games that make them immune to status effects, but status effects should be part of that thing too. Like, don't need to let me stop every boss, but let me slow them. And there are definitely exceptions to that. I just think this game is noteworthy because most of the bosses are susceptible to something. And a lot of the bosses actually in this game are susceptible to instant death attacks or practically instant death attacks, which is pretty neat. The only problem is you have to engage with blue magic for most of them, which I don't want to do. Which is kind of on me, right? So like I'll take that. After you beat Magissa and the strong friend, you get to the top of the mountain. And there are these flowers that look like dragon grass, but they're poisonous.
Right.
And
When you walk over them, it actually poisons your entire party, which is a real bummer because you have to cast, Poisona or
inventory tax.
Yeah, inventory tax. So you avoid them, but this works into the cutscene you're about to get to, because at the top, the Windrake, he is wounded. He cannot get to the healing grass, so Lena decides to take one for the team, and she dramatically crawls through this poison foliage in order to get what the Windrake needs.
Yep.
This is played for pathos. This is, something that Hironobu Sakaguchi is very proud of having put in. Mm-hmm. It's fine. I'm generally good for somebody sacrificing themselves for their animal. But yeah.
It's in the bounding box of these characters, right? Yes. Like, which is the bummer. Like, this would be a good scene. Like, I could be sad about this if if Rydia did this for one of her summons, right? Because Rydia is a character, like a really richly developed character that like I got to know. Yeah. Lena kind of isn't, and like I can understand the straw man who's like, this is her character development. She cares a lot about animals, but we don't know anything about her at this. We haven't gotten to know her at all.
Yeah,
like she's barely like a platform to put character traits upon.
Apparently, they put out something that they used to do for these big expensive games in Japan was put out basically strategy guides ahead of time, like advanced books almost that you could get for the equivalent of $5 and open it up, and it would have information about the game, and it would also give you like information about the characters. There are attributes from that book that are that apparently are intentional by Square. They're like, oh yeah, we'll put the characterization in this book, put it in the game. Yeah, I shouldn't have to buy a new book. I shouldn't have to buy or translate a book to enjoy these characters.
Well, and I also get, again, before anybody says it, like I understand that localization requires cutting a lot of content.
Yeah.
Right. Reading summaries and stuff about this, I don't feel like in the non-translated version, these characters are appreciably deep.
Yeah.
By standards of the series, right? Mm-hmm. Like, yes, they might be a little bit deeper with some more words, but it's like, it's not just the words that are being said, it's like the scenes. Mm-hmm. Like, we're not getting a lot of these characters talking to each other. The fact that they don't stop and kind of plan where they're going to go next and strategize, and talk about the threat that faces them is the problem.
Yeah.
That makes something like this, which is like, could be a dramatic act. Mm-hmm. Like, I get it. But it's not, it does not tug my heartstrings.
Right.
Cannot imagine like feeling something about this.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Even if I could feel emotions.
Exactly. Even for the few emotions I have left, like anger, spite, frustration, tired, like
dismay.
The emotions that I have, hungry, like the things that I have left, even those I would not get from this. Like, yes, I wanted to eat a little bit of dragon grass after this.
Yeah.
But that was more the emotion of curiosity. It wasn't, any kind of heartbreak.
Will it give me dragon powers if I take off some skin and then eat some dragon grass while I grow scales there? Stuff like that. Just basic questions.
Experiment. Yeah. Basic self vivisection.
Yes.
So this gives you access to the Windrake, which again seems pretty cool because it's like, shit, I got a flying thing.
I'm flying on a dragon. Neat.
Yeah. It's going to last for like no time. Like the pace at which you move through vehicles, and this is so silly. And also counteracts, Final Fantasy 1, you get that float stone.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing. This game just kind of decides to make vehicles not feel empowering, which is a really weird choice because that's such a hallmark of the series.
Mm-hmm.
So we can fly. We can't fly over mountains. So we're still kind of stuck in a hallway.
Yeah. And
this allows us to go to Castle Tycoon if we return. And we get this little nighttime scene. This is just for character development.
Yeah.
Where Lena learns that Ferris is her long lost sister, Sarissa.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But instead we're going to Waltz.
Yeah. So you can go in, you explore the town, you can go into the castle. If you go to the prison, you can talk to the guard, you can talk to the prisoners. Something that's been done before in the series. One of them is named Lone Wolf, who asks you to let him out. It's not a good idea to let him out because he will go and empty treasure chests.
Yeah.
So even though I would very much like to stick it to the carceral state and let all these folks out, maybe leave Lone Wolf in because he's going to take your loot.
Abolish Waltz.
Yeah.
So the king of Waltz is a real dummy.
Yeah.
And he's like, I'm not going to stop amplifying the water crystal. Our citizens love water.
It's an electric year. It's nonsense. It's an election year. Come on.
Yeah. If we press this button, the water gets electrolytes. Have you had this ionized water shit? Like, I bought this stuff from Whole Foods. It's amazing. But however, the conversation is cut short because another meteor arrives.
Right.
Near a nearby Waltz tower.
Mm-hmm.
And we go to the tower. which is a dungeon.
Yeah.
Just basic dungeon.
Yep, small floors, lots of floors. There are like vines you can climb up to get to otherwise inaccessible treasure chests and things. But yeah, no real twists so far. Trust me, when there is a noteworthy dungeon, we're going to talk about it. One comes later where it's actually pretty difficult. But when you get to the crystal chamber, there's this knight who is talking to a beast that has been possessed. Apparently this is the guardian beast for this crystal, Garula. Garula has gone feral, and he attacks the knight and then attacks us.
Think about how much like has not been laid out that you just kind of have to infer from this. Like, oh, there are guardian beasts.
Yeah.
Like there are like it. When you're playing the game, it doesn't feel like that. It just feels like there's an arbitrary, like, oh no, it's Garula.
Yeah, you know, Garula.
Yeah, you know Garula. All the kids are always talking about Garula. Like, okay, so some of the towers have guardian beasts. Like, if the last tower had one, you know, it'd be like, okay, this is establishing a world building.
Was that the Wind Raptor or whatever it was? It wasn't called a guardian. It was just a monster.
Talked about it. It's a boss you fight, and like the idea that each one has a beast would be something to establish. Right? Like if you were interested in establishing a world with this game.
Yeah.
Tis not. So Garula only attacks with physical attacks. Bummer that we do not have Golem yet. And we'll do double counters.
Yeah.
When you attack Garula. So kind of tough.
So you want to load up as casters. That is generally the way to go for this one.
Yep. So you can power through, or you can die and then go back to the save thing and learn from your mistake.
Right. Yeah.
The most exciting thing, though, is the water crystal shatters. Even though the narrative does not want me to want this to happen, I desperately want it to happen.
Yes.
And there's a knight here who recognizes you, or recognizes Golaf, calling him Lord Golaf, but dies before he can help Golaf with his amnesia.
Right. So these shards give us our next set of jobs, and these are just a little bit more specialized.
Yep, a little bit more advanced.
Yeah.
Is this the one where you can't get one of them?
No, it's the fire crystal.
The next one. Next one has the mime.
No, I think it is this one. Fuck.
Yeah,
there's one like 5. Up on a ledge. Yeah.
Yeah, there's one and that's can drive you crazy. You're gonna come back.
Yes.
Or you kind of come back.
But yeah, these jobs are good. There are a lot of high cards here. Time Mage specifically, incredibly useful. Not just for haste and slow, but for things like reflect.
Yeah. And high damage spells as well.
Yeah.
Later like Meteor and Comet, things like that. Time mages are really good. I mean, even just for like haste and slow, right? Like haste out damages attack spells like 90% of the time.
Yeah.
And something that's very what I ended up finding to be a very key strategy in this replay is hasting my healer. Like having my healer get roughly twice as many turns. As I ordinarily have was absolutely essential.
Oh, it's a huge leg up.
Yeah. Big leg up. So time mages, very cool. Really great utility. Berserkers, less cool.
I like Berserkers. I generally put somebody as Berserker for a boss fight. Yeah.
Berserkers,
they're so powerful.
Yeah, they do a lot of as long as you don't equip an axe.
Yeah.
Like, the axe drives me nuts because it misses most of the time. But so what Berserkers do is you cannot control them. They just attack, but they attack powerfully. That's what they do. They are popular to master because you get a big stat bump to your freelancer class, and they only take 500, like 510 AP or something like that.
Yeah,
not very many comparatively. Still behind. And then they are in the 5-job fiesta are hell.
Yeah.
Like there's all these mechanics and sub mechanics about re-rolling if you get a berserker. Somebody finally beat the game with all berserkers. That was a major breakthrough in the 4-job fiesta kind of thing. But obviously it's very hard because you cannot heal. You cannot do anything other than, other than attack.
Yeah.
So,
I generally, I will get berserk and I'll put that on a character who I know is just going to be tapping anyway.
Yeah. And it is good once you start getting some stuff with it. Like it's only fight that they do. So it won't work with rapid fire, but it will work with two-handed or dual wield.
Yeah.
Which is great.
Yeah.
Red mages?
Red mages are a trap.
Yeah, red mages are a trap, just like they were in Final Fantasy 1.
It sucks because I like the idea of them so much. Like I love the down to just the design of them. I've got a magnet, like a perler magnet of the Final Fantasy 1 red mage And I'm not even just a fan of it because of 8-bit theater or whatever. He's annoying in 8-bit theater, just like everything in 8-bit theater is kind of annoying. So the idea is that you get both you get both black and white magic, but you can only get up to level 3 spells.
Yes. And there is something, so that's the idea. They can also use better weapons and armor.
Yep.
Than the mage classes. So they're kind of all-rounders is the idea. The big thing is their ultimate ability, which takes 999 AP, is double cast, which allows you to cast 2 spells at once, which, is obviously very potent. There's kind of, when you get these guys, the kind of strategy is decide if you're going to do double cast.
Right.
If you want to do double cast, use them while they're useful.
Yeah.
Like until you get level 3 or level 4 magic, they're pretty good.
Yep.
You can set up a time mage as the support ability and then a red mage as the main class and have your casting covered.
Yeah.
Like it's actually really good. But if you're not going to go for that double cast, don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Because they're just a trap and they suck.
Yeah. It's very much a Magikarp kind of thing.
Yes.
If Gyarados broke the game.
I did some red mage time on this playthrough because because I didn't have anything else I needed at the time for my caster. Like they were already up to level like 3 or 4 on all the casting classes.
Yeah.
And then also because there is an enemy in the last dungeon which gives you an absolutely apeshit amount of AP because the game wanted you to be able to try a bunch of different strategies against the end boss. Yeah. And I was like, well, if I don't get red mage by then, I'll just do it. If I don't get it sooner than that, I'll just get it then.
Yeah.
And then my caster is going to need double cast because that caster in this current playthrough is going to be my only caster, is the idea. So having white magic and time magic or white magic summon, and then having double cast is how I'm going to keep my party alive is the plan.
Yeah.
Nice. Summoners are great. And they're very, very powerful. They have spells that attack everyone without a reduction in damage. So ordinarily, if you target the entire enemy force, you do half damage. Yeah. Summoners do not, and they're more powerful. The catch is, other than the first summons you start with, you have to actually find and fight.
Yes.
A summon. So it's like a less obnoxious blue mage.
Yeah, because you get cool boss fights, as opposed to, hoping that somebody procs an attack before they die.
Or that you have to get a fucking Beastmaster and, make them do the attack, which is, kill me. And there's a lot of good utility here. I can't imagine playing the game without the ability to do Golem.
Yep.
Golem is just so AP, and that's also true in Final Fantasy Tactics. Yeah. I love Golem. Just very, very strong casting class.
Yeah. Good utility. It is easy to think that they are just more expensive casters, more expensive black mages. But yeah, there is that utility kind of built into it.
They're better black mages.
Yeah.
I can't really imagine using a black mage over a summoner.
Right.
In this game. I don't think black magic is actually that useful in this game after the beginning of the game.
You get a really good boost to magic power too if you master it. Although the power that you get for mastering, it only comes at 500, so it's not terrible. But you just get call, which does a random summon, which not really.
If you by the time you get it, AP or MP is not a problem.
Yeah.
It would actually be a really good
low level one.
Low level utility skill for a mage. But it doesn't come at low levels.
No. And the last one, I like this class quite a bit. Mystic Knight.
Yeah.
Spell sword.
Yep. These are the guys that are, again, for breaking the game. This is the key thing. It's the final part. If I can't just break the game with my physical attacks with my plan, I'm going to give these guys Mystic Knight. These allow you to charge your sword with a spell.
Yeah.
And then your attacks all have that element and that spell attached to them. So pretty neat. It takes a little bit of time to set up.
Yeah.
But it
burn
is
a turn to do it. Yeah.
Yeah. You waste the turn to get more powerful later.
It is a good way to supplement a knight is what I found when I did that. Just because a lot of bosses, they have a prominent elemental weakness, and they're also really quick. They're one of the I think they're the second fastest class in the game, something like that. I think they only lag behind the ninja in terms of initiative.
Yeah, and it makes a lot of sense just because it is they need to be quick because they're going to burn that turn.
Yes.
Yeah. Nope. So good set. Yeah. Once you gather the shards, the pencil the tower is on starts to sink in the ocean, and Sildra rescues us.
Hey, she's back for good.
She's back. Are we gonna vehicles just come and go?
Are we gonna have a boat now? No, dramatic scene where she dies.
Yeah.
Don't worry though. We're gonna get her as a summon later.
Yep. She throws you on the beach before she dies. We can go back to the castle, and we actually get a rare hint of where to go because another meteor has struck near the town of Karnak.
Yeah.
So to get there, we cannot fly because there's mountains, which is obnoxious.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to use a teleporter that's in the meteor.
Yeah, you just have to do that by accident. There's really no reason to go into it.
Nope.
Or to expect that it's open.
Nope. Yeah, there's nothing to it.
Yeah.
Like you might remember that Galuf came through a little teleporter, but that teleported you through worlds.
No.
The idea that the meteors teleport to each other is just an arbitrary construction that came out of nowhere.
Right.
Dumb. So you get out there and you head over to Karnak. Karnak has a final. Like the only thing that differentiates Karnak is everything's a little bit on fire.
Yep. They're just fires that
funny.
Nobody seems to be worried about.
I heard you guys liked fire.
It's really hard to choose how you're going to die.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you know how they added electrolytes to the water and walls? Well, we just make everything burning all the time.
Yeah.
There's no such thing as electrolytes for fire, unfortunately. We can't make
well, how do you think fireworks work? Come on.
Electrolytes?
Yeah.
Could be.
You know, put some potassium in there, make it glow red. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what you add. I think if you burn potassium, it glows red. But yeah, everything just a little bit on fire. This just blocks some shops and some stuff in the castle. When you go and stop into a shop, you're arrested. Somebody accuses you of being in league with this werewolf that they saw crawl out of the meteor that we just crawled out of.
And like, hold up, right?
Wait a minute.
Like, when this, like a league with a werewolf. Like, what world are you building in this game? Okay, there are werewolves as well. Okay,
yeah.
And we go to the world of the werewolves. Mm-hmm. Does that explain it? Does that make any more sense for there being werewolves? No. Did they ever turn into a human? No.
Is it just a demi-human?
Yeah. These are gnolls, there's no werewolf like qualities at all. It is extremely silly.
Yeah.
Like I remember the first time I saw this, I was like, wait, I'm in league with a werewolf? What? Okay. Like, I don't know. The Dracula crystal keeps spraying blood. Like, what do we do?
I don't know. God, the Dracula crystal.
Yeah. I like the idea of the Dracula crystal. It's like a season of Decker. So we get thrown in jail. And we're next to Sid. We get to meet our Sid for this game.
Yep. Sid is an older man. He's an engineer. He's the one who actually developed the technology to amplify the crystals, which has both brought in a new age of technology and convenience and also made one town a little bit on fire all the time. He was jailed for saying that his invention was dangerous. You get the sense by talking around town that the queen here, a little bit, not great. She got tired of hearing from those pencil necks over in the Library of Ancients, so she built a wall.
Yeah.
So they couldn't get there anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. Anti-science.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, you talk to him and you're let out because, some guards come down and say, hey, yeah, turns out you were right. We done cracked the fire crystal a little bit.
Sorry. we know we just met you criminals, but would you help us? Well, we have nothing better to do. Of course we will.
Can you get your werewolf buddy to help us out?
Yeah, exactly. Okay, hold up. Yeah. So we need to stop the power that's being drawn from it, which means deactivating the fire-powered ship.
Yes.
They also have a ship that moves around. It scoots by through rocket fuel or whatever.
Yeah.
I find this dungeon extremely annoying.
Mm-hmm.
The elevators and stuff in this annoying. Really, really annoying.
Yeah.
Their enemy encounters are kind of gimmicky. There's an enemy called a defeater that when it dies summons in new enemies, which doesn't add a whole lot, but it's at least kind of breaking it up.
Yep. Something new.
Yep.
Yeah. And also there's crew dust. And I like this just in terms of, building this area, because this is the fire powered ship and because it is kind of out of control, you get the idea that some of the people who were working on this, they were immolated. And their haunted ashes are coming after you. Less interesting and more annoying is the fact that their main move is to blind party members. Blind is annoying. Blind is 100% effective in this.
Yeah. Yep. And it works for you as well, but you do not get an attack that can do it unless you want to fuck around with blue magic.
Right.
You get flash. This dungeon is a puzzle dungeon. It's like elevators and chutes that you go through to try to get certain things. And it is very annoying to do this with an encounter rate of like once every 3 steps.
Yeah.
Like even just remembering, which chute did I try already? When redoing a chute means, getting more encounters, which means, fuck. Well, that's what I was trying to avoid to get to the end of this. It's a really annoying dungeon.
Yeah.
Yep.
You get to the engine room and Queen Karnak is here and she is spouting crazy talk. talking about how all the infidels will pay, et cetera, and she is juicing the power on the engine. Full throttle, put it in neutral, and let's set this whole thing on fire. And this brings out a boss that we need to fight, the Liquid Flame.
Yep. Which has 3 forms. It's like a man on fire, a flaming whirlwind, and a hand.
Yes.
And they have different things. Like they're either immune to magic in certain forms. We'll do a blaze attack, which is a all-party fire attack.
Mm-hmm.
Does a lot of damage. Or sometimes will heal itself.
Yeah.
I think kind of a creative, cool boss.
Mm-hmm.
I love the hand form.
Yep.
Like somebody finally fucking burned that helper in effigy. Like hamburger's gonna start helping itself, you motherfucker.
I'm coming for you next, Arby's oven mitt.
Yeah, the Arby's oven mitt's gotta go. I watched a comedian recently, a lady comedian who's very funny, and she talked about how like men are always insecure about the size of their ding dongs, but they should be insecure about their hands because she's like, I don't want to fuck those people's dicks, I want to fuck their hands. And then she said, yeah, that's why my ideal man is the hamburger helper guy, because he's got a hand, a mouth, and a job. And this is a very good joke.
That is very good.
I love the idea of the hamburger helper's job, which is helping a hamburger.
You know what? You want somebody supportive,
Yeah.
Hamburger helper is not just in it for himself.
No, hamburger helper is a team player.
Yeah.
I wish there was a job class in this.
I'm a level 5 hamburger helper.
Yeah, I would do the 4 hamburger helper fiesta. Like that's probably got some like taco seasoning and some
taco seasoning, stroganoff.
Yeah.
Those are the only 2 I know.
Yeah. There's also like an all-purpose cheddar.
Oh yeah.
Kind of just like, do you want some orange goo?
Here
it comes. After you beat the Liquid Flame, the queen falls. And she says she taken over by some all-pervading dark force.
Yeah.
So she's being controlled. And something other than the machines destroys the crystals.
Right. The machines just kind of speed it along, but there is a greater corrosive force. So again, kind of swapping out the environmentalism kind of angle to this.
Literally nothing.
Yeah.
She
says, hey, you need to go to the fire crystal, disconnect it. This needs to be stopped. I have no idea how the fire ship connects to the castle.
Tunnels under the water or something. I don't know.
Maybe.
Something.
Yeah.
You get there and here comes a werewolf.
Yeah. Here's our buddy Wolf.
Yep. What do you think about the werewolf that's named Wolf? Like, do you think that his other buddies are named this as well?
I mean, that is actually a thing in The Talisman by Stephen King and Peter Straub.
Oh.
Yeah.
Doesn't sound good.
it's fine. It's fun. He's a good character. But they're just werewolves. They call them they're not wolves, they're wolves.
Gotcha.
And just call him Wolf. It's fine.
Yeah. But he's not a bad guy. You think you're going to fight a werewolf? You're not. He's one of Galif's old buddies.
Mm-hmm.
And while you're talking to them, the soldier gets possessed and flips up turns the fire crystal up to 11.
Mm-hmm.
And Wolf sacrifices himself to try to stop the explosion while you get away.
Yes.
And this is an interesting section.
Yeah.
Because on your way through this, you've maybe seen treasure boxes you couldn't get into.
Yeah.
Now you can. You have 10 minutes to get out. You can go through and try to get those treasures and raid the castle, but all the treasures are mimics. Like they have a monster in a box.
Yep.
And you decide how much you want to get to it, and there is a boss at the end.
Yeah.
So
if you're getting out like with no time left, then and you're not accounted for the fact that there will be a boss at the end, you may be screwed. That almost happened to me. I got there with like 40 seconds, and I was like, "Ooh, okay, let's see if this happens." And it was down to like somewhere between 1 and 2 seconds that I actually finished that. It was good. I didn't get the ribbon though. Yeah.
That's the one worth getting.
I know, right?
You get the electric whip.
I got the electric whip.
Beastmaster.
No, I didn't look at a guide, and I forgot that there was a ribbon here. And just like a little bit later on, when I was going through and making the notes, I was like, "Oh, dang! I could have gotten a ribbon there." Yeah,
yeah. I did a guide because I knew I didn't want to, trial and error this, right? So I was just like, "Oh, the ribbon's the only thing of this I really want."
Yeah.
And get this. There's an interesting little bit of behind the scenes stuff that is in that book that you mentioned, where this was when they started this was kind of new to the series.
Yeah,
doing this and
doing the time dungeon kind of thing.
The time dungeon, and the developers kind of fell in love with it. Would create challenges for each other, like little speedrun things, and originally had plans to put a lot more of these in the game.
Yeah,
and thank goodness they didn't.
Yep,
would have been. Yeah, it would have been too much. Like, this is fun the first time it happens. and it gives it some much needed variety.
Yeah.
But if it happened all the time, I think that'd be a real problem.
Yeah, once or twice in a game is good. I mean, they're used to really good effect in 6, with the floating continent escape and the house that's falling down that Saban has to get through. Yeah. All of that is good. Having it for no reason, just because the designers kind of went on a jag with the mechanic, probably not great. Here it's fine, though. It's good.
So you get out, you fight this boss at the end. He's disguised as soldiers, but he's actually this thing called Iron Claw, which is only really useful or noteworthy because you have this time limit.
Yeah. The commander, he's got a dog called Kernak.
Yeah.
Kernak, the Karnak Kerr.
Yeah. Yeah. Kind of related.
Yeah.
There. The castle explodes, however, and the shards explode as well, giving you less than the normal set of 6.
Yes.
Kind of hinting that the other ones went elsewhere.
Right.
Giving you 3 new jobs. The Beastmaster. So the Beastmaster is basically Realm.
Yeah.
From Final Fantasy VI. This allows you to control enemies. Essentially, this is almost only for 2 things. Like 1, laying up blue magic.
Yep.
And 2, they have like a Pokemon ability. They can like capture an enemy and then release it to do 1 attack.
Yeah.
That is too much fiddliness and investment for me.
Way too much.
It's basically like certain bosses, if you release a certain thing, it'll basically obviate them. So it's a very specific key if you want to put in the work and use a guide or do like absolutely asinine amounts of experimentation.
Yeah.
Which I don't.
Yeah. Anything like this, a beat like, using the Beastmaster's train ability is a lot like stealing. Like it's just something that you're just going to have to know to do against particular people. Back in the day, I did not see fit to, do the trial and error to figure that out. Even with a strategy guide, and even today, it's just more than I want to put into it. I understand that it is broken, but it's just not a mechanic that I want to engage with.
Yeah, it's just not very fun to me.
Yeah, to me.
I do not use the next class very much either. Maybe you can speak to it because I think that you do. The Geomancer.
Geomancers are they're extremely situational. So their hook is it's a little bit like Mog's dances in Final Fantasy VI. They get an MP free ability, so they can cast a spell depending on what the background is. So, if you are, up in the air, you can cast, what amounts to arrow. If you're underwater, it can do something that's like, aqualung. It just depends, on if the enemy that is against that background is weak to, whatever that background will let them do. Whether or not it's useful. For me, it's more about getting some kind of blue mage stuff in particular encounters. And, something that helps is the Geomancer ends up having like just kind of all around okay stats. It's a little bit like a blue mage in that regard. So you can make somebody a Geomancer ahead of an attack or ahead of an encounter. There's going to be an encounter later on in this episode against the ancient bird, the Archaeoavis. That is made a lot easier by having a Geomancer with it. But yeah, you just make them a Geomancer, give them a useful secondary ability, use it for that encounter, and then go on to something else. It's like a low effort blue mage. Yeah.
They're neat. It's a good backup ability again for a caster. Like Geomancy, because it is 0 MP.
Yeah.
And it will play into their stats, like their MP stats.
Yeah.
Right. So like it is good for that. But by this point, my team is starting to kind of actually fill out to closer to what I want it to be.
Yeah.
Largely because of the arrival of the ninja.
Yeah.
Probably my favorite class in the game.
Oh, it's great.
Ninjas are extremely fast. Their signature, they get a host of things that I'm not interested in, like being able to run away. But their 2 signature abilities are both phenomenal.
Yeah.
Dual wield, which allows them to sacrifice a shield in order to have 2 weapons and get 2 attacks. So basically doubling their DPS. Like the swords are not quite as strong as knight swords, but they're almost there.
Yeah.
Just absolute wonderful DPS. And then surprisingly, and I forgot about this until this replay, ninja scrolls are so cheap.
Oh yeah.
And so powerful that you get this really, really strong universal source of all enemy elemental damage for almost nothing.
Yeah.
They're $200 a piece.
Yeah. Which makes getting shurikens suckers bad. Do not buy shurikens.
Well, shurikens do significantly more damage.
Yeah.
Like shurikens are not a great bet at this point.
Mm-hmm.
When you come back and you just have so much money and you don't have anything to spend it on, shurikens are actually really good for bosses. Like, because it's a really good way to do like 3,000 damage to a single target.
That makes sense.
But you can do 1,000 damage to every target for 200 gil.
Yeah.
And just consistently. Like after I got these guys, there's a little island you can grind on outside of Crescent.
Yep.
And all the enemies die in one hit from one of these things, and you get way more than you spent. And you can just set everyone up to memory and just gain a lot.
Yeah.
I think you get 3 AP. So it's not like the best grinding spot in the game or anything like that, but it's incredibly quick.
Yeah.
Because of the ninja.
Yeah.
Yeah, very good class.
Yeah, you're going to want to park your melee fighters on these guys, if only to get dual wield.
Yes. Yeah. Dual wield is very, very powerful and really, really great with almost any martial class.
Yes. Love putting that on a dragoon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Something else about the Geomancer, there are a couple of interesting things because I guess I'm a Geomancer stan. Is that what Twitter teens say?
That is what all of the teens are saying right now. Or you yeet them.
I yeet it into the ocean.
You've yeeted the Geomancer into something.
Okay. Anyway, so I guess Geomancer is not the right word for them. In Japan, they're just like they practice feng shui. Is what it is. So that is why they get they get those elemental bonuses based on their environment. So that's kind of cool. That's also why they use bells as their primary attack. So neat little cultural touch point there. Interesting. Additionally, so I guess 3 things. When you roll as them, they can spot trapdoors in the floor, which are annoying, and we're going to come up on those. And they also do not take damage when you walk over damaging surfaces like lava.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even though roughly around then is when you're going to get float.
Yeah.
So I just use float for that instead.
Yep.
Because that has a lot of knock-on effects in addition.
Also, their abilities require like it just ridiculously low AP costs to master them. It's like 100. So not very many encounters to get everything you need out of them and get a good magic power boost off the back of them. Yeah.
In the face of the Cid is very upset because he's the one who created this booster that adds electrolytes to fire. So he will not leave his room at the end. You just have to check on this. You don't have to go here. It's just like if you want to go check on the inn, maybe he goes to the inn.
Yeah.
Instead, you're just going to go to the library because it's the other place that was mentioned.
Yeah. Well, the wall blew up with the castle, so you can go there.
You're still going there because you can.
Yeah.
You know, like it's still, the wall's open, so I may as well. Like it is a way forward.
Yes. Library of Ancients, big old place with a bunch of books. And the nerds here are all freaked out because they lost Cid's grandson, Mead. Yes. It's pronounced Mead in the anime. Mid. Let's say Mid because it rhymes. Mid is trapped below.
Unless Cid is supposed to be Seed. Which I don't like, because then Final Fantasy VIII runs into a huge problem.
Yes. Maybe that's why he runs the place.
Yeah, that's actually pronounced Sode. So all the agents of Sode. So, so you're going to this book dungeon with all these nerds. It's like kind of a puzzle dungeon because you have to move these shelves and climb on the shelves to navigate. I like the way this articulates though. I think this is cool. Because the enemies are these open books that have creatures that get summoned from the pages.
Yes.
And you have to fight them kind of one page at a time. I think this is cool looking.
Yeah, it's a good gimmick. I'm happy that they added a little bit of variety to this. Midway through, you end up fighting a boss, mid-boss. You find a book that has Ifrit in it, or Ifrit. So you have to do a battle against him, which brings him into your ranks.
Yep. And it's these are always framed as like a test.
Yes.
So it's just like, will you pass my test? So you do.
Yeah, and he intimidates a spirit that is keeping you from going forward.
Yeah, from removing bookshelves in front of you, like a poltergeist.
Yeah,
of some kind. Yeah, because Master Ifrit is to be respected.
Yes,
in this. So after you get through this, you get to this boss, Byblos. Again, Final Fantasy Tactics DNA, right? Because you run into Bybloses there, or a Byblos. This is a caster enemy who, when his health gets low, he drains health from you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, nothing too noteworthy other than that, but fine boss.
Yep.
And when you get to the end, you find that Mid was not under kind of spell or kidnapped or anything. He's just concentrating.
Yeah.
Because he's found a way to power up the ship.
Yeah. Also, he's a little nerd. He's a little Cousin Oliver looking nerd.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I don't like Mid very much, Gary.
No, Mid sucks.
Yeah.
I don't like Sid in this game either. I don't like either of these nerds. I don't like anybody in this library.
No. Library's cool.
Library.
Get rid of the nerds, keep the spirits. Fix the library.
That's what I want to do to every library. I'm going to vote yes on Prop 344. Because we're going to clean up the streets. We're going to dirty up the streets by cleaning up the library.
Yeah.
So.
Yes. So we can go back to Sid now. And Mid chastises Sid for being, for wallowing in his own pity. And this breaks a little bit of Galif's amnesia by reminding him of his granddaughter, Krill? Let's say Krill.
Krylie,
something
like that.
Yeah.
Kryle. I don't know.
Yeah.
Who knows? Bad name.
Yeah, it's not good.
Yeah, it doesn't sound cool.
No. But Galif, he is a king from another planet who once sealed away X-Death on this planet. And he traveled here on a meteor once he figured out that the crystals that were keeping X-Death sealed away were in danger.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So, we're moving.
Mm-hmm.
There's one last crystal left, and we just kind of have to guess. Like, we can get somewhere new because of the ship. There's some optional towns we can go to as we're looking for this crystal to kind of gear up. The best one of these is Lix, which is Bart's hometown, which he grew up in a, they never got out or anything. Like, it's, this weird colony in the middle of the mountains of implied ninjas. So this is the first place where you can buy those scrolls and buy a bunch of ninja equipment.
Mm-hmm.
So in my Bonfireside chat mind, this is a town of ninjas, and that's Bart's canonical class.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if that's actually true.
Mm-hmm.
But you get flashbacks to when his mom died.
Yeah, this is where you get the Stella Scream, it doesn't matter if that was present in the actual translation. Like, change her name so it is not a readily
reference to her name Desire.
Yeah. Like, it's just not. It's not good. It'd be like naming your bad guy Pee Wee Herman. Yeah. No, it can't work that way. Sorry. But just you get that scene. I like meeting his high school sweetheart as well.
Mm-hmm.
He's just walking around. It's just like, oh, Bart, I've got something to tell you. Oh, but maybe later.
Yeah.
Which can either be like she wants to confess her love to him, or hey, Bart's, can you meet meet my son?
Extreme Pregante.
Extreme.
That's what the extreme was in Final Fantasy Extreme. Yeah. Bart's girlfriend is extremely Pregante. Unleash the multitudes, Bart's girlfriend.
Sorry, you caught me off guard with that, with the trill on that R.
I'm sleepy. We've been recording for a while.
Yeah.
It's been a minute since we've done the 3-hour plus one, man.
I know, right?
Yeah. So, she's not extremely Pregante though. But just kind of a nice little, not even character touch, just beat, I guess.
I know. It's nice to think that these are from somewhere.
Yeah, they live somewhere. Not everybody, but some of them are. You go back to, this is a good time to go back to Waltz and get Shiva.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's another village in the northwest where you can get Rama or Rama. And it's nice to get those, round out your elemental summons. Yeah. Our main destination here is Crescent Island, and this is just I feel like this is fucking comical, right? Yeah. So the fire-powered ship, we don't need the ship to do this. We could actually get to Lix with the
Black Chocobo.
With the Black Chocobo, right? Yeah. So we get this later. Actually, we have to go to Crescent, where as we're coming through an earthquake, yes, kind of power of Earth, but also it just feels extremely arbitrary. sinks our ship underwater. And like, we just fucking got it.
Yep. You could have left the shore with the recently restored fire powered ship, and then boom, you lost it again.
Yeah. I mean, I understand, like, so there's an argument that this is good pacing. Like the fact that you're constantly losing and gaining vehicles that have limited traversal sets. This game does move along at a zippy pace, which I like. I just think that, like, this is very disempowering. Yeah. And also makes no sense for it contradicts the characters being like, this is a big deal. We got this thing working. Because we just got to watch, like, Mid and Sid create this thing. And it was like, it was that fun, airship building scene where the dwarves do that in Final Fantasy IV or whatever. Like, it's kind of cool. And then it just immediately goes away. Yeah. It's apeshit.
Contrast that with, like, you get the hovercraft in Final Fantasy IV, and it's really only useful to get from Damcyan to Mount Hobbs, right? And then you kind of leave it there. Like, so you only have that for a little bit, but later on you get the hook and you can grab it, and then it gets you, it gets you from Eblon, down to the Babel Cave, right?
Yeah. It comes back. Like, the characters don't just abandon it. Yeah. Even if the player did. Right. The character's like, oh, we still have that. Like, we can do this cool thing. It just makes more sense. Yeah. So you go to the town, and the only hint you have forward is you hear rumors about black chocobos.
Yes, which they say are extinct.
Yes.
They didn't walk 10 feet in that direction to that forest.
Yeah, they're extinct. Like, I mean, the forest is lousy with them.
Yeah. Well, it's just one, but it's a small forest. I mean, you could say this office is lousy with coal.
I do say that, and I will continue to say it. It's my Yelp review of your house.
So you grab onto them, and you go to fly, and then you go back to ground. That's because the black chocobo cannot fly because it is choking on crystal shards.
Yeah. Yep. So you have to Heimlich this guy to get the rest of your jobs from the last crystal.
Yes.
So he hawks up the ranger and bard jobs. Ranger is very good only because of that rapid fire attack. Right. Leading up to Ranger. So what the Ranger is in practice is a powerful martial back row character. So, like, in the unlikely event that you have a character who is extremely fragile because of your equipment, and you want them to do good physical DPS and not be a caster, but be from the back row, the Ranger is good for that. Yeah. They get some, like, weird little utility abilities, like summoning animals that have a couple of, like, small effects they can do. They're not very interesting or good. No. Some bows are really kind of powerful.
Yeah. And also, like, you just get access right away to a bunch of elemental bows.
Yes. Yeah. Which allow you to do elemental, and faster than you get elemental swords. Yes. But again, you already have the ninja. You can throw elements at everything for dirt cheap. Yes. So it's not more powerful than that. So the Ranger on its face is not particularly good. Its ultimate ability is one of my favorite in the game, though, which is called Rapid Fire, which does 4 attacks at random enemies that each do half damage. Yeah. So it's basically a double damage attack, but it stacks with anything else. So it stacks with dual wield. It stacks with two-handed, so you're doing full damage with the 4 attacks. And not being able to choose who you're attacking only really matters in boss fights where you have to focus fire. Yeah. And it's so quickly, once you get this guy off bows, and get him onto a ninja, it so quickly just really ups the damage. Yeah. And if you want to keep in the back row, the ninja has quite a few back row attacks as well. So you can do these 8 powerful attacks from the back row and pretty easily, pretty consistently do about, 2,600 damage spread out to the enemy. Yeah. And against a single enemy, it's very powerful.
And bosses are usually single enemies.
Yes. Yeah. So Rangers are cool. Bards, the way that bards are powered up is interesting. Yeah. We haven't talked about this, but in certain towns and stuff, you can learn songs. If you talk to people, you learn, and these are for the bard. The bard gets these abilities, these kind of songs that they can play that have different effects, but you have to actually gather them through the world. Yeah. Just by, being inquisitive, by talking to people. That is different than doing the piano practice, which is a really weird mini task that you can do. Yeah. 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 I forget if there is a reward at the end of that. There's a bard song.
Okay.
Yeah, you get a decent to good bard song for doing all the pianos in the game. I love the idea that you can only practice on a piano once and you have to throw it away. Piano meta, like this piano is like for one play.
Just a sterilized single package.
Yeah. You just rip off the plastic and just like play, an octave. Play a scale, and then it's like this guy's got to go. Time for garbage.
Oh man. Bards, so a little bit of a joke class aside from that, like they're situationally useful. You get a spell, you get a song that does damage to undead, which ends up being they're relatively useful if you add that on to a secondary add that on as a secondary ability. Harps are interesting weapons insofar as they do fractional damage. So it's not just, it's not like, okay, your attack stat multiplied by strength or whatever. Like it is, 1/16 to like, I don't know, like to a fourth of an enemy's current health. So it's a little bit like casting gravity. Interesting utility that is very obscured.
Yeah. Yeah. And probably not the most efficacious thing you can do.
No.
Like on a random encounter, you are doing more than 1/16 of an enemy's damage. You're probably doing more than a fourth.
Yes.
In a single attack with a martial class. They're mostly there for that utility, but I do not get a lot of use out of them. Like they can be very good.
Yeah. You can get hide, which sometimes helps, but if you're going to do that, it is better to be a dragoon because you get a cool attack at the end of it.
Yeah. So we got those two. We head back to the library where Sid and Mid are fine.
Yeah.
They do not care that this horrible thing happened and all their work has been. They're like dozers from Fraggle Rock.
Yeah, well, it's like, a little bit like they're more just happy you're okay. They're like, oh, we can build a new fire ship. We're just happy you're alive.
Yeah,
like, okay,
build a fucking new fire ship, man.
Yeah,
I liked that thing. Yeah. So, however, somebody spotted King Tycoon, and there's no you're just going back to report that the ship. Right, like that feels like an extra side task to me.
Yeah,
like to get a bonus scene, not part of the critical path, but it is part of the critical path.
A couple of times
they spotted King Tycoon floating above the desert of shifting sand.
Yeah.
So it's like, well, might as well go there because it's the way forward. Like nothing makes sense.
Yeah. So you go there. The desert of shifting sands is, at least in this episode, the LVP in terms of dungeons.
Yeah. This is horrible.
Yeah.
Horrible. Yeah. We can't just go into it because there's all those sands and they're all shifting. So Mid and Sid summon a sandworm so you can kill it and cross its body.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm happy that they put the boss encounter at the start of this as opposed to leaving any chance that I would have to redo the conveyor belt puzzle.
Yeah.
So the sandworm, it is a boss. It randomly appears from 3 holes in the ground. And it will pop in, pop out. The annoying thing about this is, it will do the disappearing act, and move like in between when you dial in an attack and when it executes.
Yeah.
So you can just attack something that is not there. Additionally, when you attack an empty hole, it casts gravity on you.
Yeah. Yep. And that's frustrating.
Yeah. So it is softening you up with gravity, takes half health, and then he occasionally does sandstorm to finish you off.
Yep. So pretty tough, actually, and a little bit annoying just because you can't predict what's going to happen here. Not nearly as annoying as the dungeon.
Yeah.
Which is a conveyor belt maze where you not only get random encounters just while you're trying to navigate, but on conveyor belts.
Yes.
That's beyond the pale. Like that's a real problem, because it's very frustrating. Like conveyor belt mazes in general, unless you can see clearly the direction all the conveyor belts go. Like if you're doing that, then it's like solving a placemat maze without putting a pen to paper.
Yes.
Right. If you can't see the end of the path, so it is literally just trial and error.
Yes.
And the benefit for making the right choice is getting to a treasure chest or making your way through. The detriment is having to do it over again. It's the exact same thing as those T intersections, except that instead of a T intersection, it's like a rune, right? It's an asterisk intersection. There are multiple paths to go down. Like it is bad dungeon design.
Yeah.
Like really bad dungeon design. Not a puzzle. You don't have complete information. The only punishment is tedium.
Yeah.
Like, it's horrible.
I remember this stopping me. I lost interest in the game for like a month when I first got this on PS1. When I got to this point.
Yeah. It's rough. It's a really badly designed dungeon. Getting through it, we get to this town called the Ronka Ruins in Gone Town. Gone Town. So, like the idea of Ronka Ruins. Like, it sounds like a drill tweet. Like me and my Ronka boys, like me and the Ronka boys go out and get into piss shits.
So the Ronka is apparently this lost civilization that was really technologically advanced. If you went to one of the optional towns, Kole, they talk about, we're descendants of these guys. There's really no more given than the fact that sometimes you fight some Ronka warriors.
Mm-hmm.
Don't make it sound like Tonka.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's also, they're not really descendants if the warriors are just around.
Yeah.
Like, you're racist. I see now.
I gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like, I understand now.
Yeah.
There's savages out there and you fight them. I get it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're running around these ruins. There's no random encounters. You're just like King Tycoon is playing hide and seek with you.
His force ghost.
Yeah.
Like he's moving around as a force ghost, like making you follow him around to different places until he does the old classic trap.
Yeah.
And lures you into a trap door, which puts you into this weird steampunk dungeon. Like this is implied to be the Ronka.
Yeah.
Or whatever. Like this is their technology.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're dropped into there, and you step on a warp, which takes you across the planet. I have no idea why it takes you across the planet, why the ship couldn't have just been down there. I think that they bring you over there because this is underneath, Crescent Island. You walk and you find, this is where the fire-powered ship went. And then beyond that is an airship, a ship with a propeller. That's crazy. Unrelatedly, a nonsensical comedy of errors has Sid in mid finding the black chocobo, and you press a switch, which drops them right on top of you.
Yeah. So again, all of the kind of it's dressed up as comedy.
Mm-hmm.
That is a level of simplicity to comedy that cannot work on me.
Yeah.
What if, the Laurel and Hardy were above a switch at a trapdoor and I pressed the button? I guess I don't even know how to describe that.
Yeah.
What happened there? I don't know. It's rough stuff.
Yeah.
So you lift off on this airship, but there's a monster clinging to the side that attacks you, which is the Cray Claw.
Mm-hmm. It's a big old lobster. Is this the fourth lobster we fought?
A lot of lobster, anti-lobster bias.
Yeah.
In this game.
Consider the lobster 4 times.
Yeah, consider it twice per round.
Yeah. So this is not a particularly noteworthy fight. However, we'll cast a spell, Maelstrom, I believe, which will lower the entire party to low health. So occasionally it will just create these, all hands on deck emergencies for making it so you don't get total party killed.
Yep. And making sure that you have a full heal.
Yes.
You don't have Curaga yet.
Mm-hmm.
You're definitely doing a Cura on everyone, which does not give you that much.
No.
Back. So kind of tricky.
Yeah.
At this point, once you get past him, you can fly all around the world. There's not tons of reason to, though.
No.
This should be an empowering moment, but with all because this game is so vehicle happy, we could have been everywhere. Yes, you can go clean up licks and stuff like that.
Yeah.
If you want to, that's the name of the town, right? The Ninja Town.
Think so. Yeah.
But you probably already done it.
Yeah.
Maybe you haven't. It's good that they give you a chance before the end of the game, but also it takes that wonderful Final Fantasy moment of having access to the whole world and undercuts it because it piecemealed it out to you.
Yeah.
It's like if before you watch a movie, you get to watch random 30-minute chunks of it that add up to the movie.
Yeah.
And it's not very exciting to watch it all come together now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, there's no new place to go. You can go to some islands and fight some optional bosses. Boss enemies. There's one called Prototype that it's kind of a preview of the Omega fight you're going to do later. Stuff like that if you opt into it.
Yeah.
But the place where you do want to go, and you don't know this until you just kind of trip over it. If you go back over Gone, a huge techno ruin erupts from the ground and ascends into the air.
Yeah. So, all right. There's a techno ruin.
It's a place to go.
We cannot fly high enough to reach the ruins without armoring the ship.
Right.
It needs adamantium. Adamantium comes from these meteors. What is this? Fucking X-Men 3?
Yep.
Or X-Men Wolverine? Where you find out that adamantium came from meteors. Mm-hmm. So Wolverine is lined with meteor stuff.
Yeah.
Duckstream 2018 movie.
Yeah. So you have to go there. There's a boss fight for this. You got to fight an Adamantoise. If you played a Final Fantasy game, you fought an Adamantoise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. They're pretty standard.
Yeah.
High physical defense.
Yeah. So with the adamantium cladding, you are able to ascend high enough to get to this, what appears to be a shmup level, but kind of isn't. Approaching the floating continent here, the floating ruins, and you have to take out the defenses before you can get inside. So you've got to take out, there's 2 on each side, these cannons, and then take on the soul gun itself. The missile launchers suck because they have a particular attack that will cause confuse on your party members. That is especially a problem when you're fighting the soul gun because, again, you want to have all hands on deck. If they confuse your healer, and you have to knock them out to make it so that they are not attacking you, there's a chance that you will not be healed up enough to survive the soul gun blast that it does.
Yeah. Confuse is a very annoying status effect.
Yeah.
Not necessarily like it's not like it needs to be eliminated from the game or anything like that. I wish that there was an item that cured it,
as opposed to just bonking them.
Opposed to bonking them because of that situation you describe, right? Yeah. Like this should be an inventory item that does this, or there should be one.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, there's not.
Right.
Once you get inside, there's a dungeon. This is tricky. It's lengthy. It has multiple save points in it. This is the disc 1 dungeon.
Yes. Also, there are trapdoors, or at least one of them, which is not good.
Nope. Anything where the punishment is just do this thing again, which is the basic video game punishment. Like that is the elemental video game punishment, but it's so baldly, it's exactly that's all it is. There's no twist on it.
Yeah. Big dungeon, tough enemies, durable enemies. You just have to do a lot. Like I ended up having to leave here to get some healing items to prepare for the main boss of this.
As you're going through this, you eventually catch up to King Tycoon. He's acting very strange. Like unless you're an idiot, you know that he's been possessed.
Right.
Up to this point anyway, because he's not acting like a father would. And he sends an enemy towards you, a very powerful enemy, Archaeoavis,
which stands for very old bird.
Yep, Archaeoavis, which I did not end up having the same hard time with because I was watching something. I don't remember what, but I went to that island, that Crescent Island, and I ground for a long time.
Oh, so you are a scroll.
I did the scroll thing. I got a little bit of scroll.
You're not Gary. What'd you do?
Here's what was my thinking. The thing I was watching, I wanted to pay attention to.
Okay.
It might have been during Chernobyl.
Oh, okay.
Not the event, but the TV miniseries event. I didn't do it when I was 6. So I was watching Chernobyl, and I originally was just playing to just make progress in the game.
Yeah.
But Chernobyl is so fucking good.
Yeah.
That I ended up saying like, okay, I can only tap A during this. Like this is too good. But if I can multitask like this, when I actually sit down to play Final Fantasy V again, it will go a lot faster. So I was just over leveled for this dungeon. It's caught up with me.
Okay.
Like in my current play experience, I'm not over leveled, which is the effect of grinding, right? Like it doesn't last forever. This dungeon ended up being a cakewalk to me just because of that.
Right.
Like it wasn't, this is a hard boss. I remembered it being hard the first time I played it. But you can thank the HBO miniseries event Chernobyl for it being just absolute. I just DPS this guy into oblivion.
Yeah.
Like with ninjas.
No,
like everyone is just doing so much damage.
It's really hard. Ninjas got me through it as well, but primarily because I had shurikens because I hadn't been using them. It is a source of non-elemental damage, physical damage that consistently will just I had 5 of them and it got me through the first phase at the very least. This is a wall. Like I remember back in the day having a lot of problem with this. Like if you are appropriately leveled for this, it will be very difficult. Because it kind of is subverting your regular approach to bosses. In a Final Fantasy game, you want to figure out what they're weak to, and then leverage that. Archaeoavis has shifting weaknesses. Starts out weak to air, so which is why it's good to bring a Geomancer to this. And without telling you, it will shift to become weak to something else, which means that something that you were attacking it with might end up healing it.
Yeah, which is the worst thing.
Yes.
Right? That can happen. Yeah. It's and there's no visual indication, if I recall, right? It's not like the Mage Master or what have you in 6.
Right. It just you'll just notice, one time you do an attack and it does, 800 damage. The next time you do it, it does 0. It does nothing.
Yeah. So even if you're not tracking those weaknesses, it is good to stick with physical attacks, which don't do as much damage as they could.
Yeah.
Which means you need to be hardier and stay on your heels a little bit better, or you need to have non-elemental attacks, which are rare.
Yeah.
The shurikens do it. There are some blue magics that do it. There are a couple of summons that do it, but they're not very powerful.
Yeah.
We haven't gotten our powerful non-elemental summon yet.
No. And when you beat it, it turns out this is a Dark Souls 3 boss fight because it revives and you have to fight its undead form.
Which does not go down in
attacks.
one Phoenix down.
No.
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
But yeah.
It's a very hard fight.
It is super tough.
It is a suitable disc 1 final boss.
Yeah. Super tough unless you do the degenerate monsterism that I did.
Yeah. Unless you play the game wrong like Gary did.
I did. I admit it. After you get through this, you get to the after you beat him, you get to the Earth Crystal Chamber. We find out that Tycoon is possessed for the slow people in the audience. Like, he's possessed. And Bart is going to attack him, but Ferris and Lena stop him from doing that because that's their daddy. And then out of nowhere, Kryl appears and zaps him.
Right. Says, oh, it's just a lightning spell, and it knocks some sense into him. Galeth, upon seeing Kryl, gets all of his memories back. He's got his full identity, etc. They have their tearful reunion, while Lena and Ferris have their reunion with King Tycoon. Ferris finally gets to address him as her father, Papa, she calls him. And Bart's is just like, well, okay,
why am I here? Oh, I owned a chocobo. I had a pet.
Oh, dang!
Fuck, man. That's why I don't have anyone who loves me right now. That's why I'm Dennis Miller at the end of the Saturday Night Live credits. No one's hugging me. Like it's because I left my boy. I abandoned my boy. Yeah. Nobody likes me here. I should go. I'm just gonna jump off this airship because I'm a worthless piece of shit. Time to go.
It's not good.
Yeah, he's not a good character, folks.
Nope.
Yeah. So this causes the Earth Crystal shattering at this time, which it shatters, is the last seal that causes X-Death to get out. He appears in the chamber to taunt Galef before moving on to Galef's world.
Right.
Which is a lot like Scatman's world. Except in worse shape.
Yeah.
And so X-Death, like his design at this point before he becomes a tree, is just like extremely tall man in armor.
That's Golbez.
Yeah, it's very Golbez, but like worse Golbez.
Yeah.
Like worse color scheme, worse design. Like it's harder to tell what's going on in his torso. I blame Nomura because of course I do.
I blame Nomura because I have eyeballs.
Yeah, exactly. And because I want to keep using them. I don't want them to, I like my eyeballs. I have them and love them.
Yeah. I only have 2 payments left.
Exactly. Not one for each. So he does this. It's causing the airship and stuff to fall apart on this flying city. King Tycoon sacrifices himself to hold the ruin together just long enough for you to escape. Right. Why he can do that, why he can send his life energy to hold together a building, I don't fucking know.
I don't know.
Does not matter.
No.
It's just arbitrary nonsense. And once this happens, we get these new jobs on our way out.
Yes.
The 4 final kind of main jobs, except for hidden ones and the GBA ones.
Right.
So let's talk about them.
Let's do it. First, we have Samurai.
Yep. A very powerful kind of like advanced knight version of that. More utility, some stronger attacks.
Yeah.
Their base verb is to throw money. Which is a samurai thing.
Zenonage. Yes.
Zenonage. Which is apparently very powerful. In this game, I haven't used it a lot, and I haven't used it this playthrough, so I don't remember.
Yeah.
But I didn't use it a lot in my earlier playthroughs. Like I like samurais in this game and in Final Fantasy Tactics. They kind of come a little bit late by the time I'm already kind of invested in other things usually.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
it's a good thing if you have nothing else to level up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. They have good stats. Katanas are really good. Yeah. Dragoon, which I know is a bad class, but I still have a tremendous fondness for them. Just aesthetically, I don't know. Maybe it's because Kane is such a good character in 4. Don't know. I like doing jumps. I like having a spear. I like being having a character off of the playing board for a little while. It's good. It's good. It's bad, but it's good.
Yeah, it doesn't synergize very well with what their stats are, right? So like having a very high armor, high HP class.
Yeah.
A lot of times, a good move would be to add cover.
Yeah.
To that, so the character can cover your people, that does not synergize well with jump.
No.
Like having the player off the board when they're your strongest character, like you want this character to take a hit.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want them not to take a hit. So it's a weird, it can get you past some like instant death or practically instant death attacks.
Yeah, jump is good to get as a skill for another class, basically.
Yeah.
When you know that, if I time it right, I can miss this big attack that would otherwise do me in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, and having one of the things I do like about this game in general is that none of these classes are so shitty that you can't use them if you like them.
Mm-hmm.
So like, yes, there are optimal ways. It's fun to break the game and stuff, but if you just have an affection, indulge.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
The dancer is somebody who it's a little bit like Mog as well.
Kind of.
Like a little bit, like you do dances that have different effects. It is random, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah, it's one of 4 is what it is.
Yeah. And they do kind of different things. So like you end up with like charming every enemy, doing damage to every enemy kind of rarely, things like that. I have not really used them, very much like in either of my playthroughs. They
get the ability to equip good weapons and accessories.
Mm-hmm.
And that is their highest skill. Equip ribbon is what it is. So I think they're the only class that can innately wear the ribbon is what I believe. Additionally, they get a power flirt that lets you confuse enemies. That would be much more useful if status effects were more broadly effective.
Yes, like especially like confuse, which is not going to work on bosses generally. So a lot of status effects do work on bosses in this game, but not that one.
Yeah.
So they're again, I know you can break them and make them much more useful. Mm-hmm. There's also this thing with like the dancing dagger. There are 2 pieces of equipment you can find in this game that will fuck you up.
Yeah.
The dancing dagger, which has good stats, but you don't attack with it.
Mm-hmm.
You do it makes your character do a dance move.
Mm-hmm.
So when you optimize your equip, anyone who can equip a dagger will equip this fucking dancing dagger, and you have to unequip it.
Yeah.
The other one is the bone mail.
Oh yeah,
which is
it turns you undead.
Yep, turns you undead, has great stats, and if you go into a boss fight and when you're at the critical moment and you heal everybody, and one of your guys dies, that's what happened.
Womp womp.
Is so it took me longer than I care to admit to just be like, okay, I guess I can't optimize on level change.
Nope,
because the game's gonna trap me for doing so. But there are things with the dancer where you do that, where you do the most likely sword dance more likely if you equip that on a dancer, and sword dance is a powerful attack. So there's ways to make this good.
Yeah.
These are all very situational, actually.
Yeah.
The chemist is also a very weird class.
Incredibly exploitable. If you can look up and find the combinations, they have the mix command, which lets you. It's a little bit like this is later, and obviously this character pulled from it, but it's like Riku's ability.
Yeah, that's where that came from.
Yeah, this is where it came from.
Yeah. And they also have the drink command because you'll be finding some potions around. Which give a buff, some of which are unique, some of which are identical to spells.
Yeah.
It's frustrating to me that you need to drink to do those and have that drink command. It can be, again, very exploitable.
Yeah.
So in some ways, it's a very advanced class. Before guides were about, the level of experimentation required for this is like quite a bit.
Yeah.
And some of them are just, so when you mix 2 items that you can mix, it doesn't affect. These will either emulate spells or be other unique effects. They take place immediately. And it is, again, the key to certain bosses.
Mm-hmm.
There are things like, berserks the entire enemy, and it just obviates certain bosses. They're just going to do physical attacks, fine.
Mm-hmm.
No worries. So it's very powerful if you feel like putting the time into it.
Yeah.
Kind of like Blue Mages, except like with more research and less homework.
Yeah.
You do have to grind stuff up. Like you do have to gather materials for it.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to do something, it's like, well, I need to do a lot of getting black holes or dark matters or whatever, turtle shells.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not super fun to me.
Yeah. And that's all of the jobs except for Mime and the Final Fantasy Advance ones. So
that we'll get later. So those are basically the jobs.
Yeah.
So now we are ready. Our planet needs us. So we escape on the airship. And Golov explains how his plan from 30 years ago went awry. They basically just dumped Exdeath here.
Yep, this is a planet with crystals. There were also people here. This is only 30 years ago. This would be like...
This is a horrible thing to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, evil warlock from our home planet, extra dimensional threat, wants to end all life, literally has death in his name. Let's hop on a meteor, kill him, take him to this place, and then Shanghai him, basically. And yeah, they sealed him away in the crystals, but from within the void, he reached out. We saw how he possessed people. He pulled the old Zemus gambit, in order to influence the world, so he could break his seal.
Yep. And this is a frustrating plot development to me, because how cool is the idea? And I can't think of a good piece of media that does this, that deals with the aftermath of banishing a force and where you banish it to.
Right.
Like, that's a unique, like, fantasy sci-fi kind of construction, right? Like, not unique, but rare.
Yeah.
Like, I can't think of a good example of that right now. That's interesting. The idea that, and it also has really great environmental ties, right? Like, you can never really throw something away.
Right.
You can make it away from you, but it impacts something.
Yeah.
That's a thematically rich, resonant idea that just doesn't played with very much here. Like, the kind of Teflon nature of these characters and the story and how it's articulated is like, I can bring, it's not like typical overreading, right? Which is what I think is the reason why people talk about Final Fantasy VIII as being an absolute genius work of like emotional tapestry on the likes of Guernica.
The best love story ever told.
Yeah, when people do that kind of thing, they're overreading, right? Like, somebody on the Slack introduced me that term. I really like it. It's not always bad. I'm really glad people do it. Like, I'm glad that there are people, like Austin Walker does it a lot. I love Austin Walker. I think he's a really, like, I don't always agree with him, but I think he's a really great thinker. And one of the things I think he does is he engages in this kind of overreading. Like, if I bring 40% of myself to this piece of pop culture media, I can fill in the cracks to make it build this entire theme that is very cool.
Yeah.
I'd rather think this is cool than not. So it is a good thing to overread into this.
This is something that H-Bomber Guy does quite a bit.
H-Bomber Guy does that a lot.
Yeah.
Right? Like, he's also an example. It's pretty, it happens a lot. It's not a bad thing. My brain isn't made for it.
Yeah.
Like, I don't, there's, I think of this in terms of percentages of sensitivity, right? So, like, if you can go into Final Fantasy VIII and say that it is actually this genius subversive work that has all these incredibly rich themes that made you cry and stuff, I think you're giving 30% of yourself to it or something like that, right? Like, it does some work to get there, but you're giving a percentage of yourself. Like, I have a hard time giving a large percentage of myself to work like that. Like, I probably top out at like Dark Souls 2, which I get like a lot of emotional resonance to, but it doesn't do all the work it needs. Yeah. But it does some. I think to get this thing I'm describing or get that emotional resonance from Final Fantasy V, you have to be at like a 90% overread rate.
Yeah.
Like, you have to bring so much of yourself to this because there just isn't characterization, dialogue, sense of place. The plot is just a straight line. That's one sentence. Like, there's just nothing there for you to build. You have to give so much of yourself to make something worth thinking about with Final Fantasy V.
I want to go and read Final Fantasy V fan fiction.
Yeah, I wonder what that's like.
Yeah,
that's literally the last thing I want to do in my life. I think I wouldn't do that if you paid me, but I want you to, and I want you to talk to me about it.
I'm curious. I'm curious how people do. Yeah, I think I want to read Final Fantasy V fan fiction.
Yeah. So what a sentence.
That's why I said it twice.
Yeah, it's let that sink in there. That's how you can tell. The fact that I am pushing back on this is how you can tell I'm not still a Skrull. Because I think a Skrull Gary would be like, oh, that sounds great.
Yeah. Well, I'm just like, if there's a place where people are going to do that, like somebody say like, oh, I love the town of Tool. Like, what's the aftermath of all those pirates being there?
Yeah.
Like
more than fan fiction, I want to I don't want to, but I can imagine the essay that is like, this game is a powerful meditation on the idea of inheritance.
And give it the old Sekiro one too.
Give it the old Sekiro one too, and like, it just requires way more than even Sekiro does, right? Like, Sekiro, I think, does those themes and stuff, but there's weird similarities because they're both like overly simple. I think Sekiro has really good characterization.
Yeah.
If I think Sekiro is 10% or 15% too simple, I think this is like 95% too simple.
Yeah.
Like it is just requires so much more of yourself to make this cool. And the frustrating thing is that missed opportunity. Like the story of what happens to the world you send something to is incredibly cool. Like what if the entire world was shaped by it?
Yeah.
Like what if when it happened, it was a color out of space kind of thing and people were sick and it was like the Final Fantasy VI dark world. Or whatever, like it actually had an impact and you got a sense of how the people lived and you got a sense of how it impacted a character.
Yeah.
And maybe it changed the economics and it changed the structure of things. And they did any work, any work for that stuff. Instead, it's just arbitrary. Like we thought it was environmentalism. It's not environmentalism though. This metaphor is actually resonant. It's a space wizard who wants destruction for nihilism reasons.
Yeah.
And there's no real, this is also not processed on Goluf's side, right? Like the fact that they did this is the scene where they fess up the monumental crime that it is of summoning or shunting somebody into another world is never addressed.
No.
Like no characters are complex enough in this game to experience guilt.
Yep.
Like they can say they're guilty once and then we're back to throwing puns around with zigzags or whatever the fuck that guy's name is. Like, the other, the four warriors with the dumb name, Zip Zap. It's a really big missed opportunity here. And I find it very frustrating because the thing, when we talk about that transactional experience of games where it's like you have to trade the bad part for the good. Yeah. The good part of this would not be lessened by having the bad part of it be made better.
No. And, imagine the straw man or at least envisioning a rebuttal saying, hey guys, the story just isn't what this is about. Like it's kind of not fair to critique it because, et cetera. It is. And I, go back to what we talked about with no sense of urgency or propulsion from event to event. I would argue that it absolutely, the lack of any kind of motivation, in whatever sense of the word you want to use, for the characters in the story in this, that it does hamper the play in this, that it does take a lot of the wind out of the sails. Of the events in this game. It does leave you marooned, just to kind of literally wash up someplace where whatever dead idea they have, it just kind of plays out until it lets you aimlessly kind of bumble into the next thing.
It is a really having those kind of things you can grasp onto. Yeah. Like this is a cool idea about this is very important to not just the experience of a narrative of a game, but it contextualizes what you're doing. So if I'm doing something kind of like a bland task in a game, having a cool reason to do it doesn't do all the work in the world, right? Like if it did all the work in the world, I would just unabashedly love this genre, but it does a lot of work, theming
matters.
Theming totally matters. Like more than it's given credit for. And certainly more than to me, more than presentation, less than what you're actually doing. I want to do a cool thing, but definitely more than just presentation, the context surrounding it. And when the fact that these characters just kind of arbitrarily I got to find the next glowing spot on the map, which continues. These characters get teleported to another world. Not a lot of time is spent on it. And then it's still just find the next glowing area because that's the way forward. Yeah. Maybe 1 out of every 5 times we have a goal. Most of the time it's just and there's just nothing to grab onto. And they solved this. Yeah. 4 is great at that part. Yep. 4, even when you're doing an annoying dungeon in 4, even when you're doing an annoying dungeon in the after years. I know why I'm doing it. I think the after years is a really bad game. Yeah. I think that I know why I'm there. I have a reason. The characters discuss hey, we have to go through this dungeon. I know we've already been through it a bunch, but we have to go through it. Then you go through it. And there's a reason, it's connected to the main plot. It's connected to characters, connected to all these threads that the game just lacks. Yeah. It's very weird. And the idea that there are Final Fantasy V games and they're just the same as Final Fantasy VIII and the same as, Final Fantasy III and stuff no, there's just Final Fantasy V. It's just the one that does this. Yeah. And if this was Final Fantasy II, they would make a lot of sense. Yeah. Because we made a mechanical breakthrough, but we're still kind of dealing with this slightly simpler storytelling method. But coming after 4 just does this no favors.
None at all.
Because 4 is good. 4, that's a good story. That's cool melodrama. Those are good characters. They're still archetypes, but they're at least archetypes. Yeah. This is just very frustrating. So again, this reveal that like, oh, this is what happened is deeply unsatisfying instead of being a cool twist.
Yeah.
Because they do nothing with it.
I mean, and it speaks to how important consequence is to storytelling.
Yeah.
You know, like there has to be, you know, a reaction for the action that you take. And what we see here is there is either no consequence present or the consequence is muted. You know, it is perfunctorily addressed and then moved on. I mean, consider, you know, the monumental consequence that is present just a couple of years later when they put out Final Fantasy 6, rather.
Yeah.
You know, where the world ends. You know, you still have an enemy who is, you know, megalomaniacal for nihilistic reasons, but there is consequence. There is a result from what happens. You know, it is not constantly, you know, chasing the aftermath, right?
Yeah. And that character is like, it's not like nihilism itself is a horrible goal.
Right.
For something like, I don't think it's very interesting. I think it's to be used sparingly, but the reason why it works with Luca Blight and the reason why it works with Kafka is because we're shown the extent of their cruelty in human terms.
Yes.
You know, so Exdeath's cruelty is never really shown.
No.
As a character. Like, he's a horrible villain. Like, he is extremely flat because we're never like shown the human cost.
Right.
Like, even when he is in power, when you go to the other world where he's in power, we don't get to see, like, are there villages he's raised? Are there homeless
We don't get
children?
to see the oppression.
We don't get to see anything.
Just like, you know, when we see the oppression in the Empire in 6.
Yeah. You know, and I love the Empire 6. Like, I love Kafka. Yeah. And there, you know, it has a framework. Like, there's a context. Like, hey, there's a military here, and Kafka has poisoned the river to break the siege. It's a war crime within the rules of this world. And wow, that shows me that this guy is a real piece of shit. You know, there are rules in that world.
Yeah.
You know, there's this very basic level of scaffolding that's missing here.
Yeah.
And it really makes me surprised that this game has the reputation it does, because it's good. Like, the job system is great.
Yeah.
It's super, super good. It's not the first time to do it, though. So, like, the credit for firsties, you know, even though it's not, it's
the credit for firsties goes to a worse game.
Goes to the worst, like a way worse game. And one, you know, probably the worst job system in Final Fantasy, which is 3.
Yeah.
You know, but this isn't that innovative. Like, it made improvements that are important, but it's not that innovative.
Yeah.
And the things that people love the series for, it just decides not to engage in.
I went back to this expecting the game to have more nails to hang its hats on.
Me too.
Yeah.
I was certain that I was being unfair to it, because I always remember this as being the worst Final Fantasy story that I played through. And I was like, you know what? I'm really want to play it because I want to do some crunch.
Yeah.
I'm in a crunch mood. I'm always in a crunch mode. That's my secret. I'm always crunchy. And I was like, I'm going to give this my best possible, most charitable foot forward. Like, how can I be as kind to this as I can to the plot? I had a renewed appreciation for 4 when we did it, of like how that handles melodrama. It just didn't happen for this. And I'm almost done with them. At the end of Act 2, I have cleanup and like 4 major dungeons and then the ending.
Yeah.
You know, so it just never comes around.
Yeah.
You know, and I also get, like, there are parts of it, like in that book, they talk about how what Exdeath is trying to do of like return things to nothingness is like more of a cultural concept.
Yeah.
In Japan as something. I don't think that actually addresses the criticisms, though, about what holds that up.
Yeah. No.
You know, they still need a reason to want it.
Yeah. I mean, just,
you know,
even if that is the case, it's still not enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So extremely disappointing. This reveal sucks.
Yeah.
So we escape the airship, as we mentioned. Gelef and Krilo Krokok leave for their home planet.
She Aztec?
Yeah. Like, I don't know what she is. I don't. It's a bad name.
Yeah.
Leave for their planet, taking their meteor, bringing the party up. They talk about how, like, we're like, hey, we'll follow you, and they're like, well, it's a one-way trip.
Yeah.
There's only enough meteor juice, so there's meteor juice in play.
Yeah.
To make a one-way trip. If you come with us, you're not coming back, so you're not coming with us.
Right. And they say, fuck you. I'm going to go to another planet.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. And so we go and find Sid and Mid, and they are returning this adamantium because apparently it's real dangerous. You know, the leftover adamantium from the ship upgrade. They're taking it back to the Tycoon meteor. And like, oh yeah, like this is what is providing the energy. So we have to go around and go to all of the other meteors, gather enough adamantium to power a portal to take us.
which gives us opportunity to do a few bosses and summons.
Yes.
Right. This is kind of a weird little coda after that climax dungeon.
It is.
Yeah, I'm not certain about this as a pacing beat. So we go to the different and they're like comedy things.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like we just had this like huge reveal that said like an alien decided to imprison a elder creature in our world, but let's go do some fun with Sid and Mid the idiots.
Yeah. Don't go in there. Oh, did you poop? No, they're monsters.
Yeah. Christ. Yeah. So the first one, there's a Purobolos, which is an interesting gimmick fight. It's a bunch of bombs, classic Final Fantasy enemies. But when one of them dies, they cast revive on the entire group.
Yeah, they cast a rise, which is a full full revive on everybody. However, when they die and they cast that, it actually depletes their MP.
Yep.
Yeah.
So they can't keep doing it, but it does mean if you want to game this, you want to do even damage to everybody and kill everybody at once.
Yep. So you bring out your kicks.
Yeah, bring out your kicks and you bring out your
ninja scrolls. Yeah.
Yep. And you can take this guy out. That's kind of the gimmick.
Mm-hmm.
Titan. Who is this very strong, physically strong enemy, is very resistant, cast Earthquake, which is an incredibly powerful spell, which can be obviated by floating, which you don't have yet.
Right.
Even though you can get it through mixing, there's a chemist way to do it.
Yeah.
Cast Earthquake when he dies. You just have to survive this at the end, and you get this guy as a summon.
Yeah. This is where I loaded everybody up with a Dragoon and just hoped that somebody was up in the air when it fired.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'll definitely work.
Yep.
I think I just brute force this. I think this is still on my over leveled.
No, I couldn't survive because sometimes like when I was down on the ground, not doing the Dragoon encounter or strategy rather, he would do 2 earthquakes at the end, killing everybody. So
yeah, which is a cheap shot.
Yes.
And then Manticore, the final one, who is a Manticore, and mostly attacks with these very strong like total party attacks that cause the drain status effect, which is like poison that you can't cure.
Yeah.
It's like a sap. I think it's called sap in some of the other.
Yeah, drain is an actual status effect kind of thing that you do. No, it just it's a little bit like having bio cast on you. Yeah, but it'll do like Aqua Rake or Aqua Lung or what have you. So many different names for things because of the different translations. But yeah, really tough. Just because you have to deal with this. I forget what strategy I used earlier today when I beat this thing.
There's a loading up on healers. Helps with this guy a lot. Just being able to do a full or close to full heal. Yeah. Like frequently we'll having 2 turns where you can do cure on everybody per round will obviate this mostly.
Yeah. I like this triad of bosses though, even though it is kind of a weird pacing decision to have you go do hijinks with Sid and Mid. Just because each of these bosses does have a strong gimmick that requires you to understand some of the corner cases of the abilities and bosses that the abilities and classes that you have so far.
I agree with
good
that.
Fights.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. And then now we have all the adamantium. We're able to open up this warp at this intersection of all the meteors. Like it looks at our map. We can go here. We want to make sure we've done everything. And then we can jump in the portal and go to the next world, which we'll talk about next episode.
Yeah, covering worlds 2 and 3. So,
yeah. And that's it.
That's it. Thank you so much for listening, everybody.
Yeah. We will be back next week with more Final Fantasy V action, and then the following week with Wolfenstein: The New Order. Thanks everybody for listening. If you have things to say about any of these games, which include Way of the Samurai 1, Final Fantasy V, or Wolfenstein: The New Order, hit us up at Duckfeed.tv/contact. Do so by the 15th. If you want to participate in our dispatch episode at the end of the month, keep an eye out for that post. The way you do that is by being a patron. Go to patreon.com/Duckfeed.tv.
Yes. Being a patron also gets you the full versions of our premium episodes. So Wolfenstein: The New Order is going to be a premium episode. So to hear that entire thing, become a patron. Doing so actually gets you access to all of our previous premium episodes. So things like BioShock Infinite, Resident Evil 2, the remake, bunch of stuff like that. A full episode on Adventures of Lolo because Puzzle Month was weird.
Yeah. And that's a fun episode.
Yeah.
It was very, very tempting to do the, just have Battle on the Big Bridge be the only song for this one. Similar to how the Lolo song is the only song for the Lolo episode. But we did not do that.
No.
When you're hearing this, plenty of time to come to Duckfest.
Yeah.
go to duckfeed.tv/duckfest, and please come visit us. It's going to be extremely fun. Mm-hmm. It's only $15. You're going to get a cool little swag bag. You're going to get a whole day of podcasting in an air-conditioned movie theater with snacks and concessions, and then a fun night out at a very good barcade, drinking beers with some tired boys, and playing some arcade games. Come beat Ninja Baseball Batman, and join us.
It is a rare delight.
Yep. It is you owe yourself a vacation.
Yes.
So, and I think that's probably about it.
Think so.
Yeah. So until next time, what should they watch out for, Cole?
Watch out for motivations.
They'll get you.
Yeah. You know, you just want them. Like, keep an eye out. Add motivations to your stories.
Yeah. If you're writing, watch out for motivations and add them.
Yeah.
Shouldn't have to tell you that. We'll tell you that.
But apparently we do. So.
Yeah. Yep. Umbasa.
Umbasa.